One thing that has always captured my imagination was Itachi and Sasuke's relationship. While Sasuke seemed like your standard revenge is bad parable, I did enjoy his drive to kill his brother. And what's better is that he actually accomplishes his goals. But what always made me think the most was Itachi's response to all of this. Itachi fostered this mindset. He welcomed it, and even hoped it's what Sasuke would choose. In most stories, they explain why hatred leads to hollow feelings, and why it makes you less of a person for chasing it, and how it can never bring back the dead. But Naruto's story goes down a different route. While the story still talks about the self-perpetuating cycle of hatred, they don't entirely judge you for it, and think that it's a viable answer, and that people who say these things, that you can't bring back the dead with revenge, are merely people who don't understand what you're feeling. Pain's entire arc taught us that. It still warns about it, but more or less features the belief that it simply leads to a vicious cycle. Now, am I saying it's a good idea to seek revenge? No, but the feelings aren't themselves an evil thing. The curse of hatred is something that we all go through at some point. When love is turned to hate, it's not an unnatural thing for us. To be filled with anger and seek retribution is to be human. But as humans, imperfect and always growing and learning, we should strive to be more than human. To seek revenge is to seek justice for oneself, but to deny revenge is to seek justice for the future generations. But there I go, monologuing again, and rambling about the state of the world and the human condition. Did you not come here to be entertained? Then please, grab a bowl of popcorn and allow me to weave you a dream in the Amagi's world of Infinite Tsukuyomi. Let's view a world where Sasuke left with Itachi. Welcome to the Amagi. Before we begin, we publish a new video every day, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos. We've also noticed that a lot of folks who are watching our videos aren't actually subscribed to the channel. We know that YouTube does a good job of getting you what you want to watch, but if you want to make sure that you don't miss a video, and if you want to support the Amagi, we'd really appreciate it if you clicked that subscribe button. Thanks so much. The Amagi's reach stretches beyond just this channel, so if you're a fan of us, please consider subscribing to our other channels and following us on all of our social media. Help us reach our goal of passing 100,000 followers on all of our accounts by the end of the year. The cold night air blew across Konoha. It was a summer night and the crickets were chirping. The air was sticky with a high dew point. The air only grew hotter and wetter with the introduction of human perspiration that echoed out of the Uchiha clan compound. Further still, the scent of blood wafted through the air, traveling through the densely packed space where oxygen and disproportionately large amounts of nitrogen. Itachi didn't notice the nitrogen though. To him, it felt like he was wading through pure oxygen, like any small spark might suddenly set the world ablaze, popping the planet's atmosphere like a balloon with the sudden expansion of gases, like some unhappy grenade floating through the void, a small speck in a vast universe. A nameless speck to which Itachi was even smaller. Was this life's meaning? Orochimaru had once spoken to Itachi about the meaning of life, in which he had said there was no meaning. Things were born only to die. This outlook had really warped him when he was a child. Itachi remembered how such a concept had nearly driven him to self-oof via fall damage, and would have had his survival instincts not kicked in. Jean-Paul Sartre once said, "Every existing thing is born without reason, prolongs itself out of weakness, and dies by chance." Itachi had thought he had experienced that. He felt as if this one phase was the story of his life. After all, Orochimaru seemed to believe it as well, and even now as he stood above the bodies of his own parents, he began to wonder what the purpose was for their lives. Why was his father born, if this was his fate? What good was the title of clan head if the end of it was the same grave he would have had without the title? What of Itachi? Was he born of his mother simply to supplant her into the ground? Was Itachi born to kill? Was he born as the physical manifestation of death? He looked out the window and saw the same crows that had haunted him for all of his life, flying through the vast expanse of the sky, calling together the fowls of land of fire to the feast of damnation. Itachi began to wonder what fate was worse, his or his clan's. Was it better to die a painful and fearful death? Or was it better to live a guilty and dishonorable life? Was there even a difference at this point? What was the meaning of life? There was no meaning of life. Nothing held meaning. Birth, life, death, nothing changed. Whether you were breathing your first breath of oxygen as a baby in a hospital or breathing your last breath of water as a drowning sailor, it made no difference. The world was indifferent to your existence. It had spun since before your birth and would continue to spin after your death as well. Their lives made no difference. His life made no difference. Futility, pain, suffering, the causal nexuses that were tied to all beings. So many attempted to sever these ties, whether it was to flee into a world of infinite dreams where things revolved around them, or whether they sought to become Hokage for acknowledgement. All humans wanted to know that they mattered, that they left behind a legacy, some eternal stone bearing an epitaph. Worse than dying was to be forgotten. Worse than being forgotten was never having been known at all. Nothing mattered. Itachi heard a shuffle behind him. No, something mattered. Something mattered more than all life. Something mattered more than every breath he would ever take. Something mattered more than every life in the Uchiha compound put together. Itachi turned around. Sasuke. The small boy stumbled backward, eyes full of tears, body quaking in terror as he looked upon the pool of blood that seeped out like crimson tree sap, slow and sticky, the devil's maple syrup on pancakes of human bone. The terror in his eyes, a fear of death so potent that death itself would be a mercy. Itachi stepped forward. Sasuke was his everything. He was his reason for fighting, his reason for killing, his reason for living, his reason for dying. And that was it. He needed Sasuke to be his reason to die. Itachi's life was meaningless, and he would never be remembered for anything but what he had done. People would revile him and spit upon his grave. He would live on only in infamy, with people speaking that the world would have been better had he never been born. Perhaps that was a fate better than being forgotten, or perhaps it was worse. Itachi didn't have a mind to care anymore, but his brother. He knew that if he could stage it, if he could frame their conflict in such a way that it was displayed in the most black and white format possible, that maybe, just maybe, Sasuke would become a hero and his name might live on a little longer. That maybe he would rise to become Hokage, his face forever enshrined in the vertical wall of mountain. To do this, however, he needed one thing. He needed to make Sasuke hate him. Itachi knew that the knowledge of what he had done would not affect Sasuke in that way. Sasuke would likely follow the standard path of the 5 stages of grief. That was to say, he would deny that Itachi could do such a thing in the first place for the longest time, and when evidence failed to support this delusion, Sasuke would eventually grow angry with it, with Itachi, with everything. But further, he would begin bargaining, willing to take Itachi back so long as Itachi made some poor attempt at amends, and when that failed, he would fall into a depression, and finally, he would get over it altogether, leaving the memory in the past as he accepted the future. That would be what Sasuke did, and perhaps it was the natural thing, but it was not what Sasuke needed. What Sasuke needed was a motivator. He needed something to dedicate to. He needed to be wedged in anger, trapped there. The anger needed to be intensified. It needed to become hatred. And to do that, he needed to make Sasuke suffer. He needed to show him that there was no room for denial and delusion, that there was no bargaining. He needed him to be too angry to be depressed, and last of all, he needed to make it unacceptable. Something so cruel and vile that no mind could comprehend how such evil could come about. A sense of justice nestled in the heart of hatred. He needed to make his path of vengeance, which would feel so good it must surely be wrong. So undoubtedly right that all he could think of was scratching the itch that Itachi would place in his heart. He would grip his little brother by the collar, and after Sasuke begged and demanded to know what Itachi had done and why, Itachi would simply show him the truth. Tsukuyomi was truly a frightening technique. In the span of a single second, one could live a lifetime in the illusion. An illusion where time no longer held meaning, as the perception of it was sped up to a point that seemed impossibly quick. Perceiving illusion at the speed of light years. That was a tricky balance, finding the sweet spot between cruelty-causing hatred and cruelty-causing insanity. He had to bring Sasuke so close to the edge that he would be mentally scarred, yet still functional. And that's what he did. He simply sat their parents' death on loop for a short time in reality, and a time just long enough to cause mental distress within Sasuke to draw him closer to the edge of sanity. He left Sasuke there to wallow and turned to walk away, uttering the simple words, "You're not worth killing. Not until you have a Mangekyo Sharingan." He began to walk away as he let his brother recover. All the while, his voice almost cracked under the weight of his tears. But as he walked away into the night, Sasuke rushed at him angrily to strike him. Surely this has awakened Sasuke's Sharingan, and the rush of hatred and sudden infusion of power and perception gained by his newly born copy-wheel eye would give him the confidence to charge. But it did not grant him enough strength to hurt Itachi. Or so he had thought, until his simple counter of Sasuke was suddenly countered by Sasuke himself, who, after pulling one of Itachi's own kunai, cut him dangerously close to his carotid artery. Itachi was astounded by these movements and by his skill. He looked to Sasuke in surprise, who was still kept at arm's length, yet stuck on Itachi like glue. Looking into the eyes of Sasuke, he saw a flower pattern within his Sharingan glowing in the night. Sasuke's tears of sorrow turned to tears of blood. Something within Itachi snapped. Mangekyo Sharingan. How was this possible? Had Sasuke awakened the Sharingan at some earlier point? Or could it be possible that Itachi had inadvertently awakened it right out of the gate? Was it possible to awaken a Mangekyo Sharingan with the same event that awakened a standard one? How was this possible? He saw the tears in Sasuke's eyes, the blood mixed with water running from his eyes, the glow of red present in the center of his irises. His brow furrowed, yet displaying not anger but sorrow, as if something precious was taken from him, which of course it had been. But this was something more. His face bore pain, as if the kunai in his hand were being used to put down a rabid dog that had once been your sole friend. Sasuke was crying right now because he had to kill Itachi. Your eyes, Itachi said. Sasuke's expression lightened as he looked into Itachi's Mangekyo, Itachi's eyes overflowing with pain and sorrow. Itachi fell to his knees, holding his baby brother, looking into his eyes at an equal size. Sasuke. Sasuke was no longer struggling. He merely held the kunai tightly, saying nothing. It was as if they had met for the first time all over again. Both Itachi and Sasuke were two completely different people now, reshaped by their actions. It felt as if years had passed, despite the massacre taking place within the confines of 60 minutes. Sasuke's confused face slowly contorted into pain. Pain in his heart. Why'd you do it, Itachi? Why'd you do it? He said, fighting through tears. Mom and Dad, what did they do wrong? Itachi could not answer as he felt his tears overflowing. He pulled Sasuke into a hug, apologizing over and over again, begging for the boy's forgiveness, begging for his understanding. He had failed once more. He was too weak to sacrifice the thing that meant more to him than his own life. Itachi lifted Sasuke up into his arms, and together the two vanished into the night. The Anbu soon would step into the village, ready to execute an operation to put down the uprising, but what they saw when they got there made even their blood run cold. It was then reported to Danzo and Hiruzen, who would have to come and see for themselves. This resulted in Hiruzen disbanding Root. Why? Hiruzen wasn't stupid. He knew that Danzo had something to do with this, he just couldn't prove it. Not yet. All the while, in an undisclosed location, Itachi brought Sasuke to a bedroom and lay him down in his bed. His eyes were wide, yet had dark circles under them. The contradiction of needing sleep, yet being unable to. Fear-induced insomnia. Itachi had known this himself and would soon experience the same, but he wanted Sasuke to sleep in hopes that he might forget what he had seen, maybe lessen the scars that Itachi now heavily regretted inflicting upon him. When Sasuke couldn't sleep, Itachi bid his brother to look into his eyes, to which Sasuke would carefully do. Itachi would cast a subtle genjutsu over Sasuke that would rob him of consciousness. The best thing about this was that Itachi could, through Tsukuyomi, control what manner of dream Sasuke had and how long he would spend in it. He knew he and Sasuke couldn't remain in one place for long, but he crafted for Sasuke a world where everything was okay. A world where he maintained awareness of what he had done, a form of lucid dream. But a world in which he could come to terms with this with Itachi's help. A world to help quickly mend the wounds and trauma. As Sasuke lay there under the genjutsu that should put him to sleep, Itachi would notice how quickly Sasuke's chest pulsated from his heartbeat. Quick and hard, as if he were still in the moment. Leftovers from the experience. Itachi placed his back against the wall, next to the bed, and let out a gasp to relieve himself emotionally. Such turmoil in his head. He wanted to scream, wanted to cry. He wanted to have the meltdown that his mind drew so close to, but he couldn't. Not in the presence of Sasuke. Not while they were officially behind enemy territory. Suddenly, in the room, a masked man appeared. Itachi straightened up. Madara. The masked man strode a bit closer to Sasuke and with a single finger pushed a stray strand from the child's face. Your little brother, I presume. The one you sacrificed your life, conscience, and soul for? Itachi sat there, his hand tightly gripping a kunai. Oh, you can't be serious. Did I not just go out of my way to help you slaughter your people? Why would I turn on you now? Itachi's grip loosened. He lowered his head, exposing slightly his shame and weakness. The masked individual cared not for any of this and was merely here to offer him options moving forward. I assume you desire rest. I will give you time, but do not take too long. The Anbu still search for you. Once you're ready, make your way to the northern bank of the Naka River. There, I will have a boat waiting, and we can flee to safety. There is a place we can go. A place that will accept you and I into its ranks, and offer protection to us and your brother. Itachi said nothing. The masked man lingered for a moment to see if Itachi had anything more to say, but he didn't. Just don't keep me waiting long. The masked man disappeared. Itachi took a breath and wiped his face. He leaned his head against the headboard, his body wedged between the bed and the dresser. In one hand he held a kunai, and in the other he held Sasuke's hand. Closing his eyes, his body shivered, nerves a total wreck. His face was pale and sweaty, as if he were truly sick, but still he didn't complain. He attempted to sleep. Sasuke and Itachi managed to rest from that moment until just before sunrise, where Itachi would wake up and stand. He would come to Sasuke's side and release the genjutsu. Slowly, Sasuke's eyes would open and he would look at Itachi silently without much of an expression at all. Itachi looked down on him the same, but after a slightly drawn-out blink, Itachi's expression softened. "Let's go find a home." He lifted the boy onto his shoulders and made his way out the window. First things first, he needed to visit Hiruzen and report to him right away. Sasuke likely had no idea what was happening. Hiruzen was already up and walking about. He hadn't slept since the incident occurred. Itachi approached Hiruzen, letting Sasuke down and taking his hand. They both walked up to the Hokage. Hiruzen looked back to see Itachi and Sasuke. He took a long, deep inhalation from his pipe before beating the smoldering tobacco out of it on the railing. He placed it in his pocket and walked over to them. Itachi began the conversation with a simple status report. Mission accomplished. Hiruzen seemed disturbed deeply by what he said. "This was never the mission I approved, Itachi." Itachi shook his head. "No, but you can't deny the result. Konoha's balance will soon be restored, and the threat of a world war will no longer be on the horizon. The threat of war will not be on the horizon yet." Hiruzen spoke. He looked up at Itachi. "It'll come, all the same. Because that's the destiny of shinobi and humanity as a whole. And when it comes, we'll be the lesser without the Uchiha." Itachi silently thought about it before continuing. "Let the Hyuga pick up the slack. They're more than capable. And so long as Konoha retains its Jinchuriki, your futures are secured." Hiruzen looked down at Sasuke for a moment before kneeling down. Sasuke appeared dead behind the eyes as he looked up at Hiruzen. "Is little Sasuke okay?" Itachi shook his head. "No, and he probably never will be. Nor will I, but we'll survive. We always do. You really ought to think about what's best for your brother. If you take him with you, the both of you will always be running, will always be hunted. He'll grow up a fugitive, and you'll never be able to live a happy, stable life. If you leave him here with me, I'll find a place for him. He'll be safe." Itachi looked down at Sasuke, who offered no sign externally of anything, even of consciousness. He remembered Danzo. "Sasuke will be safer with me. Perhaps we'll always be on the run, but we'll have each other." Hiruzen looked to Itachi once again after a brief glance at the child. "Where will you go?" Itachi thought about it. "There's a rogue shinobi team, a group of terrorists who seem interested in Konoha. I will join them and report back anything I see there to you." Hiruzen shook his head. "You've done enough for Konoha. Run away and make a home on some simple island somewhere. The village hidden in the mist will likely be safe for you. They're no stranger to killing and genocide. I'm sure you'll be fine there, and Sasuke will be able to attend school." Itachi shook his head. "My mind is made up. It's important that we discover what the Akatsuki are up to." "Are you sure that's what's best for Sasuke, though? Are you sure he'll be safe?" Itachi recalled seeing Sasuke awaken his Mangekyo Sharingan. "I think he'll be fine." Hiruzen sighed. "Fine then. Please be safe." "I will," Itachi said. Before he could go, though, Hiruzen then knelt down to Sasuke, who seemed to stare straight through him. "Sasuke." The boy's eyes looked to Hiruzen's, though they maintained the same dead stare. Hiruzen offered a smile. "Listen to your brother, okay?" Sasuke offered no response. Hiruzen pulled something from his robes. It was a stuffed animal done up like a shinobi. He presented it to Sasuke. "Take this with you. He'll keep you safe." Sasuke's expression didn't change. His arms simply wrapped around the plush and brought it closer. Hiruzen stood. Itachi looked to his former superior. "Thank you, Lord Third, for everything." Hiruzen bit his lip and nodded while stroking his goatee. "Just be sure to take care of yourselves." And like that, the two were gone, like leaves in the wind. True shinobi, who inherited the will of fire, a tiny ember which, though it had left the village, would erupt into a wildfire wherever it went. Itachi was a true shinobi, and he had inherited a dedication to the village that would make even Hashirama proud. Together, Itachi and Sasuke made their way through the forest until they reached the northern bank of the Naka River. There they met with the masked man who had a Tosawasen waiting for them. Itachi took one look at the fishing boat and wondered who Madara had killed to take it from. The group were about to meet. "They're not to know of me," he said. Itachi seemed confused by this. "And why not?" Madara thought for a moment. "I would prefer my identity to remain hidden behind a mask, so to speak. It's better that way for all of us. A time will come when I will eventually become a true member of the Akatsuki, but until that happens, I wish to be as unsuspecting as possible. If people were to know that Madara Uchiha were still alive, things would become more complicated. Only the Akatsuki leader, who we're meeting, knows the truth. Itachi agreed to these terms. Their hideout is just up ahead, Madara would say before eventually leading them to where they would be introduced to Pain. Entering the facility, Itachi would notice a massive statue in the center of a figure obviously non-human, apparently chained and blinded. A voice called over from a dimly lit area of the room. Well, if it isn't Itachi Uchiha. Itachi looked over. Orochimaru. Madara cleared his voice to a lighter, more playful tone. Oh yeah, I forgot. You two are from the same hometown. Is this gonna be a touching reunion? Orochimaru stood there and smiled nefariously. And who is that with you, Itachi? What an interesting child. Itachi pushed Sasuke behind him a bit. Not so much that Orochimaru was an immediate threat, but because Itachi was making a statement. A statement to both Sasuke and Orochimaru. A statement that said nobody will touch my brother. A dead silence fell over the room, with Toby standing between them, his head craning to stare at each of them in quick succession. Is this gonna be a problem? Orochimaru turned to walk away. No problem. No problem at all. Itachi was led deeper with his brother into a room where waited Pain and his aide, Konan. Itachi saw the man's eyes and did not recognize the dojutsu right off the bat, but by the mere presence and force of his chakra, Itachi knew it must be something fairly powerful. But for a moment, Pain's gaze turned to Sasuke, who, in response, pulled closer to Itachi, the first expressive movement he had made all day. Pain's eyes turned back up to Itachi, as if to tell him that this was a shinobi outfit, not a daycare. He spoke. The Akatsuki are a group dedicated to world peace. Instead of 5 great nations, the world shall be ruled by the Akatsuki. Itachi scoffed. That's quite a lofty goal. Pain acknowledged this, and that's why we're assembling skilled shinobi, without asking about their history. Itachi of the Leaf, we welcome you into the Akatsuki. From here on, reject your village. Itachi stood there and looked down at Sasuke, who looked back at him with a timid look in his eyes. Itachi smiled and placed his hand on Sasuke's head, and then removed his headband. Placing it on a rock, he took a kunai in his hand. He looked at the kunai before looking at the symbol of Konoha, his family, his clan, his friends, his comrades, his village. All of it had been sacrificed for their security, for Sasuke's security, and with this final act, he was severed. He knew he could never return to Konoha again, not as a citizen anyway, but the defacing of this forehead protector carried with it a sense of finality, as if this marked the end of everything. Pain looked at him with a slightly questioning gaze. Itachi realized he had been stalling. He put his kunai up against the metal, pressed down, and with a single quick motion carved a mark through it. With this done, Pain approached him. Starting now, you are Itachi of the Akatsuki. He presented Itachi with a ring of the color red, and at the center of it was a kanji for the word scarlet. Show the world pain. Itachi would then be presented with a black cloak with red cloud patterns on it, the signature uniform of all those members of the Akatsuki. Pain would turn to leave. Konan stood there before the flames with Itachi and spoke. We have quarters for each member. You're free to rest there. You will have to share a room with your brother, of course. Itachi put the cloak on and turned to Konan. That will not be an issue. Konan turned and left. Toby, who was now the last person here in the room with him, turned to Itachi and spoke. You would do well to rest. You begin your work at sunrise tomorrow. And with that, Toby too disappeared. Itachi was now alone. He looked into the flames and fire almost as though he were looking into the flames of hell. He imagined his soul within them, burning, crying out in agony of punishments well deserved. He felt a hand grip his. He looked down to see Sasuke, who was also staring into the flame, his eyes and brow contorted into a mixture of sadness and fear. Itachi stroked his hand with his thumb. Sasuke looked up at him with the largest eyes that seemed to crave some answer, some assurance that it would be okay. Itachi tried to offer assurance with a smile. Come, let's go to bed. He would walk with Sasuke to their room and would find it a little more than a cave with a cheap mattress and blankets. He would sit Sasuke down on the bed, remove his shoes, and prepare to tuck him in. It was then that Itachi heard the distinct growl of an empty stomach. He stopped in his tracks and looked up at Sasuke. He realized that he hadn't eaten anything in over 24 hours. Itachi himself realized that he hadn't eaten anything either. Itachi wasn't hungry, of course. Who could eat after what he had done? But he knew that he needed to take care of Sasuke. Sasuke was far younger, and he would need to eat if he were to grow into an adult as strong and tall as Itachi knew he could be. Would you like something to eat? Sasuke gave a slow nod. Itachi smiled. I'll go see what I can scrounge up for us. Itachi stood and turned to leave, only to stop when a silhouette was found standing in the light of the door. Itachi's fists loosened up, his Sharingan glowing in the dark. Eventually, Konan stepped into the light. In her hand was a platter of onigiri and a pair of cups with a pot of tea. "I assumed you would be hungry," she said, "so I brought you leftovers from lunch." Itachi cautiously approached her. He took the platter. "Thank you," he said just as cautiously. He brought the platter back to the bed with Sasuke. He sat it down. Sasuke couldn't take his eyes off of Konan. She gazed at the child for a moment before looking to Itachi. "We don't generally allow children here. Our work isn't for the innocent." Itachi, kneeling down in front of his brother, turned his head to direct his words back at her, though his eyes never made contact. "He has nowhere else to go, and I cannot leave him behind." Konan listened to Itachi speak. "Your brother will be safe here, I can assure you. If you serve the Akatsuki well, his life will be defended as if he is one of our own. You have my word." Itachi thought on this, and then he felt slightly touched that she would say something like this. She walked over and approached them, to which Itachi kept careful awareness of. She knelt down in front of Sasuke, who obviously found her appearance to be unsettling. She pulled out a piece of paper without breaking eye contact. Sasuke seemed terrified now. Even Itachi turned his full attention toward her. She then displayed it in her hand. It appeared to be origami, a frog it seemed. This captured Sasuke's attention. Konan raised a finger and placed the frog on the ground. She pushed down on the bottom of it and then slid her finger off. The frog would then jump into the air, springing forward like a real frog. Suddenly, Sasuke's eyes lit up and his mouth pulled into a wide open smile, as if this novel experience were the most exciting and engaging thing he had ever been a part of. She picked up the frog and presented it to him. Itachi smiled, as he had not seen Sasuke smile like this in quite some time. "Thank you for that," he said to Konan. "He's been through so much the past few days. I was beginning to think that he might not ever smile again." Konan stood. "Never forget that we fight for a future where kids like him will always smile." She turned around and left the room. Sasuke's smile remained for some time. Itachi presented him with a rice ball. Sasuke took it happily and bit into it, devouring it almost whole. Itachi had to ask him to slow down for fear he might choke. Itachi presented him with a cup of tea. Sasuke took the tea and used it to help wash down what remained of the bite in his mouth. He let out a sigh. Itachi ate the rest of the onigiri on his own. After this, Itachi stood there and removed his shoes and his cloak and sat them to the side. Returning to Sasuke, he lay the boy back in bed and covered him with a blanket before setting his froggy to the side. "Are you going to be able to sleep?" he asked his little brother. He was ready to cast another Tsukuyomi if he needed to. He knew he could only use it so many times before blindness set in, but he was willing to do this for his brother if he needed. Sasuke refused, however, sure he could sleep on his own. Itachi smiled. "You're very strong." He then crawled in beside him and snuggled up. Together, they fell asleep. The next day, Itachi woke at dawn. Konan came to the door and told him what was needed for his first meeting. Itachi saw Sasuke sleeping soundly and decided that it was best not to disturb him. So he stood, grabbed his coat and shoes, and stepped outside. Coming out of the base, he saw the group had met on a cliff face overlooking the horizon. The sun was rising. Itachi watched it with the others. After the sun made its way above the horizon and into the sky, each member turned to start leaving. "Most meaningless meeting of all my life," Itachi thought to himself as he began to turn and leave. Suddenly, Pain spoke up. "Itachi, you will be teamed with Juzo. Juzo Biwa, a former member of the 7 Ninja Swordsmen of the Mist, the current carrier of the Executioner's Blade." The new swordsman didn't seem too pleased with this new situation, stuck with the new guy, but at the same time, he didn't protest. Juzo bid Itachi to follow him, and Itachi did. The two turned to leave. As they walked away, Itachi reflected on the new life he now lived, as well as the one that Sasuke had been forced into. He hoped his brother could forgive him for this, but all the same, he hoped that he didn't. In the end, he still hoped that one day he might meet his end at Sasuke's hand, but until then, he was fine continuing to play the big brother. Itachi had been paired up with Juzo Biwa, the former ninja swordsman of Kiri who had carried the pilfered Executioner's Blade. Itachi supposed that there could have and would have been worse choices to team up with. How many of these could be trusted? Sasori, the controller? Kakazu, the rabid animal? Orochimaru, the snake in the grass? Juzo was a swordsman, and so he had honor. Honor not in his village, but in himself. His blade was his only friend, and he planned to both live by it and die by it. There was something in Juzo that reminded Itachi of himself. There was a lot. He was insanely brutal in combat, but he was also efficient, and that efficiency was what led to Juzo being considered as dangerous as he was. He was professional in the field, but also possessed a somewhat laid-back personality that could focus on humor. There was a side to him that made Itachi comfortable, something that felt like home, as if he were back in the Anbu all over again. And much like himself, Juzo was a rogue who was driven out and hunted by his country just for doing his mission. But unlike Itachi, Juzo held resentment in his heart for his village. To a point, Itachi almost felt bad about spying on the Akatsuki. From an early age, Itachi was always gifted in sympathizing with others. He had seen the darkness of the shinobi world and grew to detest it. Despite that, he engulfed his entire being in said darkness. He hated when people got their hands dirty, but he knew someone had to do it, so it might as well be those who were capable. And he was more than capable. It was his dream that one day nobody would ever have to see war and death, and because such a day had not yet come, he had to wage war like no man had ever waged before, in hopes of digging straight to bedrock, going straight to the source of the problem and eradicating it. Well, that's what he had previously believed anyway. These days, Itachi didn't really know what the best path to peace was. The Akatsuki were in the middle of some plan to enact peace. To some, they might think it's crazy and extreme, and while Itachi could not condone their actions against his village and would stand opposed to their attempts to harm Konoha, he also couldn't say for certain that they were entirely wrong. He was never really a wide-eyed and idealistic person. He was a realist and saw the world for what it was. And Pain's belief was simply to bring peace through the only language humanity shared in common, and that was pain and war. Humans were incapable of understanding each other or their plans, and only through inflicting it could brotherhood bonds be formed. Anger begets anger, vengeance begets vengeance, hatred begets hatred. It was an endless cycle that could only reach a conclusion when all power was on one side and no power remained to resist. When dualities became singularities, when yin and yang became wuji, only then could they be free from the causal nexus that the world fell into like a bad habit. Itachi found himself caught between his belief that they were all insane terrorists and his belief that maybe they were right. Itachi had always been taught to see the full picture from every angle, and he hoped to teach Sasuke the same. While he believed that pain was at least coming from an understandable and possibly correct place, Itachi's loyalty was and would forever remain with Konoha. As imperfect as it was, that was his home. And even if he could never live there, even if he was hated and hunted by those he protected, he would never stop loving it. Itachi entered the room where he had left Sasuke. The boy was still sleeping, his plush by his side, paper frog on the table beside the bed. He seemed to be sleeping peacefully. What could he be dreaming about, Itachi wondered. Perhaps he was reliving a happy memory with his parents. Perhaps a dream in which none of this had ever happened. He loved watching Sasuke sleep and regretted the fresh wounds he would feel upon waking up. To know that those dreams were only dreams and would never again be possible. That affected Itachi. Every so often, whether it was an intrusive thought or a complicated side of himself, he would find himself asking if he shouldn't have killed Sasuke too. There wasn't any reason save mercy. Sasuke would do better with their parents instead of someone like him. And though death was that thing people feared, at the end of it all, it was nothing like that. The body was merely a home where your true self lived. For some, the house would be destroyed or burned down. Others would find infestations of termites or some other disease that would slowly wear it away until it needed to be condemned. But no matter what, the human soul was immortal. The true you was immortal, and even if the body passed away, the soul would live on eternally, just in a different spatial location. That thought was what kept him strong. He hadn't ended his parents' existence, he had merely sent them to a new home in which to live, one that they agreed would be a better place to be. He kept their memory alive in his heart and kept his view that they still existed, just in another place away from him, equally as real as the cave where he stood. This was the thought he used to comfort himself, the thought he used to quell the terror and guilt that any other way would have led to harakiri by self-conviction. Itachi would stroke Sasuke's head. Suddenly, there was a presence by the door, like pure death, unfocused at the moment. Itachi looked to see Pain standing there. "What can I do for you, Lord Pain?" Pain looked in. "This child, why is he here?" Itachi looked at Sasuke. "He's my little brother. I couldn't leave him behind." Pain was silent for a time. "You know that our place is no place for a child. He will be exposed to rough individuals. He will learn of war with his own eyes and be exposed to the same danger we are. and even though you know this, you chose to bring him with you. Itachi was silent for a time. Pain's eyes truly were ones that saw truth. Why? Pain asked. Is it because of love? No. If that had been the case, then you would have left him where it's safe. Is it attachment? Is this love for him or for yourself? Itachi was silent. Are you going to make me let him go? Pain didn't speak immediately, letting the words that bore the weight of Itachi's heart fill the room and fully express themselves. He then spoke. No, you are now free to do as you will. I won't force you to separate yourself from your beloved brother. Once upon a time, I too had a brother. I say this not to force any reaction from you, but as a proverb, never bring with you that which you cannot afford to lose. Itachi nodded. Pain then spoke. Your first mission will be with Juzo Biwa. There's a contract out on a politician from Kusa. You're to go there and kill him, no matter what. And while you're there, there's a secondary mission that should line up. You're to demolish a bridge that's being used to circumvent an old settlement which now suffers because traders pass them by for the new bridge. Kill your target, and then make your way to the bridge and demolish it. Then head to the location on the map to claim the bounty. Return to headquarters thereafter with the full payment, and you shall receive a percentage of the reward as your cut. Itachi nodded. He looked back down at Sasuke. Pain spoke. If you fear for your brother, then entrust him to the care of Konan. She will take care of him. Do not let your affection for your brother cloud your judgment. Itachi nodded. He shook Sasuke a bit and woke him up. Sasuke opened his eyes and sat up in bed, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. Big brother. Itachi smiled kindly. I have to go on a mission, Sasuke. I'll be gone for some time, perhaps a few days to a week. I'm going to need you to stay with Miss Konan, okay? Do as she asks and treat her with the same respect that you would treat me, alright? Sasuke nods. Itachi picks up a bag and begins to head out through the same door frame where Pain stood. Once Itachi was out of sight, Sasuke turned his gaze toward the shadow of Pain, his Rinnegan being the only thing visible besides the slight color of his own outline. Sasuke shivered a bit and swallowed hard. Pain looked down on him. Within his mind, Pain possessed complex feelings over this situation, an equal balance of emotion and logic. Emotionally, he sought to offer compassion to both Sasuke and Itachi by offering protection to the boy who had found himself in this situation. However, the logical side to his thinking was that Itachi had brought with him a burden and baggage that would likely get in the way of their effectiveness. Pain just hoped that Itachi's skill was not overblown by Tobi and Orochimaru. If Itachi was causing the Akatsuki more trouble than he was worth, there would be hell to pay. Come with me, he said simply. Sasuke slowly but grudgingly crawled out of bed and began to follow Pain, feeling as if the Grim Reaper were leading him off to die. Sasuke would be brought to Konan. Pain looked to her. This child will be your responsibility until his elder brother returns from mission. Can you accommodate? Konan looked down at Sasuke for a moment before returning her gaze to Pain. I can. Pain turned to leave before stopping. Consider offering him some training. If he has any potential as a shinobi, it should be molded now. It's only fair that Sasuke brings something to this table besides burden. Konan nodded. She looked down at Sasuke and smiled before offering him a paper butterfly. What do you know about being a shinobi? Sasuke shrugged. A few jutsu. Konan's smile became even lighter. Okay, how about we do some training then? Don't worry, I promise we can make it fun. Sasuke smiled. Okay. Itachi and Juzo were walking down the road alone. They were surrounded by tall rice plants on both sides. The rice hung down before them. As Itachi looked at it, he surely felt that this field alone could provide for an entire village for quite some time. It was a wonder to him that there was so much hunger in the world when food in some places was so plenteous and easy to get a hold of. Damn! They're late, Juzo said as he stood there with his blade. They were in the middle of a road where their target was said to be passing through. Makes me wonder if they caught on or something, Juzo said. Itachi continued to dwell on the rice in the field and continued to contemplate the situation that the world was in. Greed. It has been said that the love of money is the root of all evil. Nations vying for power and influence care only about optics and less for what is actually right. Itachi was a byproduct of that. Konoha needed to get rid of the Uchiha, but they didn't want to own it. They didn't believe to be viewed as genocidal maniacs, despite the fact that this is what they truly were. And so they used Itachi to do it and then cast him aside like a used kunai when the deed was done. Cast him off and put a bounty on his head. This field was another victim of this. So much food, and it was merely one portion of what the world was capable of providing. Yet people starved without food and water. It wasn't that these people couldn't be helped, it was that there was no profit in doing so. To do something out of the kindness of your heart did not line your pocket. pockets. It did not ensure you a future. To share excess was still sharing, and sharing meant you lost so others could gain. Itachi couldn't help but realize that the first lesson of human interaction that children were taught by their parents and guardians, sharing, just so happened to be the one thing humanity could never seem to grasp. Itachi's mind moved to Pain's movement, how he wished to bring peace to the world by destroying its ability to fight. Itachi understood this and believed that it had the possibility to truly succeed. But for how long could it work? Who was to say that the Akatsuki themselves wouldn't just settle down and become the warmongers, the greedy politicians, the ones unwilling to share? Were they trading in 1,000 tyrants for one? As much as Pain believed in his goals, Itachi knew that most everything in this world was temporary, and that included the generation living in it. Pain would one day grow old and die, as all things did, and his legacy would be left to the next generation. Yes, he could choose and train one to replace him, but slowly, as generations passed, that dream and the understanding of pain and the abhorrence of corruption would slowly be diluted until one generation completely forgot the lessons Pain taught and renewed the cycle torn down. The world was chaos, and the natural order was disorder. To build a country, an empire, to build an ideal, eventually everything was eroded. Nothing ever remained what it was. People changed. Their ideals changed. What they wanted and what they fought for changed. Yesterday's enemies became tomorrow's allies, and the rich of this generation would only find the empire given to them by generations of hard work pissed away until the spoiled children who knew no hardship were forced to lose that which they took for granted. To be rich was not wrong. To make money was not wrong. To forget how you did it, why you did it, and forget those less fortunate, well, that was something totally different. Itachi supposed it not to be much different from kings. From one generation, a man fought for freedom and led his people. The next generation lived in excess and began to believe what it meant to be king was to be served. The difference between those who worked for their peace, worked for their freedom, and those who merely inherited it was that as generations passed, the meaning behind it, the value, was diminished and taken for granted until it was gone and the world was left in a worse state. This cycle of winning and losing, this cycle of building and destroying was as fragile as a flower in the wind. The irony in this world was that the only thing that never changed was change itself. Itachi then began to wonder to himself, what do I fight for? What does anyone fight for? We live and die in wars, waging battles and fighting for things, only for those who never lifted a finger to trade it all away for something subpar, like a child who chooses a nickel over a dime because the nickel looks bigger. So why do we fight? And who do we fight for? Itachi had no answer. Why should anyone ever fight for anything besides themselves? In a world where everything was temporary, what good would dying to change things matter? Everything changed on its own. Change was free, so why were they paying for it? Itachi thought back to Sasuke and the world he would grow up in, and perhaps the world in which Sasuke's children would grow up. Itachi was fighting for himself, the things he cared about in the present. His village was a proponent of the world's endless cycle that Itachi so hated, yet he loved that village and would die for it. This was the warrior's conundrum. This was the men of peace going to war. This was the symbol of humanity, and why, through even all of our sciences, no one could understand the human mind. That was because there was no logic, rhyme, or reason to our thoughts. Our minds were a melting pot of chaos and random samples that we pulled out of thin air. Infinite stupidity and infinite chaos, from which one may occasionally pull a nugget of truth. Humans disagreed with themselves, and that was a part of it. The two hemispheres, the left and right side, one for emotion and the other for logic. One to make sense and act accordingly, and the other to act without sense. This was what humanity was, and it— "You really aren't one for small talk, are you?" Juzo said, interrupting Itachi's introspection. Itachi looked over. Huh? Oh, sorry, I was just thinking. Juzo rolled his head on his neck. I've been over here talking for at least 15 minutes while you stare off into space. What are you even talking about? Itachi looked to him. It was nothing. Ah, come on. Don't give me that. Let me see inside your brain. Itachi sighed. I was trying to understand human nature. Why we fight for things that ultimately are impossible, or things that'll never last. Why we give our lives for things that will eventually pass away. Juzo scoffed. You're seriously contemplating the meaning of life? You know we're here to kill, correct? Itachi smiled, realizing that he was proving the point in his own head, that humans are contradictory creatures. Perhaps so. but I just can't help but wonder what any of it means. Juzo lifted the executioner's blade and laid it across his shoulder. I'm no philosopher, but I can try and tackle your question. But to answer it, let me give you another question. We're all born into this world with an expiration date, correct? We're born to live, yet we die. And everything we do is eventually forgotten. My name will not be remembered 1,000 years from now, and everything I've done will be forgotten and no longer in use. It'll be like I never existed at all. So why do you think I go through with the process of living at all? Itachi looked over questioningly. Juzo spoke. Because I'm free. I get to decide what I do with my life and what it's worth spending on. People say that you can't put a price on human life, but that's false. You can put a price on it, and the price of that human life is dependent on how many years you're remembered, how many people remember you, how you affected the world and what people think of you. All our lives, we spend trying to increase our own value. Why do we do that? Because we want to feel good about ourselves. We want to feel like we're good people, that people respect us. The value of a human life is what people are willing to give or take due to you. The bingo book, for example. You have a bounty. They literally put a price on your life. The guy we're about to kill has a price too. We want to feel special, like there's nobody like us in the world, but the truth is, we're all the same. Humans exist, and there are bound to be people alive either now, in the past, or in the future who look like us and have similar, if not the same, experiences and reactions. We're not unique or special. Everything in this world has a price, and it's up to us to decide what's worth spending our value on. Itachi thought about this. That's not too different from what Orochimaru believes. Juzo shrugged. Orochimaru's a nerd. He thinks way too much anyway. It sounds like you think quite a bit too, Itachi said. Juzo laughed. We all do. Our mind is always active, but what we focus it on determines who we are. Itachi shook his head a bit as a scowl crawled over his face. I don't know. I don't like to think of humanity that way, that we're meaningless, worthless, or it doesn't matter. I know we're meant for something greater. It's like humanity is incomplete, and on a subconscious level, we all know it, and we strive for perfection. And what is perfection? Juzo asked. Itachi didn't know. Interpretations on that are as varied as there are reasons to fight. What is it that makes us complete? And why do we give our lives to help make others complete? Maybe it's because by attempting to make others complete, we make ourselves complete, Juzo said. Or maybe I just read that off a fortune cookie. Is this really the time to debate why birds fly and why we breathe air? Itachi sighed. You're right. Now, what are you trying to tell me? Finally, Juzo said with relief. I wanted to know what you're good at. What are your strengths and weaknesses? I'm good with genjutsu and shuriken jutsu. I'm average with ninjutsu, and my taijutsu's about average as well. Juzo nodded. As you can see, I swing about a heavy blade. It's slow but strong, and with proper technique, I can maximize the momentum and cleave a lot faster. Beyond that, I have some basic ninjutsu. Itachi then asked, why is it that you wish to know? Juzo pulled his thumb across his nose with a hint of pride. Know yourself and know your enemy, and victory will come to you. Itachi smiled. So you are a philosopher. It's another fortune cookie, Itachi, Juzo said. The two began to laugh. Suddenly, they heard a flock of birds fly off. They quickly turned and got ready. In the distance, they saw a group of warriors bearing katana walking as unarmed servants bore a palanquin on their shoulders. Is that the target? Itachi asked. His Sharingan activated, attempting to search for any detail that would give away this target. Beats me. I don't see anyone else coming down this highway. Itachi noticed the crest of the target politician on the palanquin. Confirmed. This is our target. Juzo thought about it. Doesn't look like the guards are all that impressive. Probably designed to stop bandits, Itachi said. Well, they're about to get more than they bargained for, Juzo said. He then looked back at Itachi. This'll be the perfect practice to build up our synergy. How about we form our first formation? Formation? Itachi asked. Of course, Juzo replied. We're gonna build up our team synergy by creating planned strategies. For this one, I think we should do a little sleight of hand. You're an Uchiha, yeah? That makes your natural affinity fire release. I need you to step up in front of me and launch flame jutsu at them. That will distract them. Then I come down from above. They'll never see it coming. All right, Itachi said, agreeing to the plan. The two then set into motion. Honestly, this might have been overkill and Juzo knew that, but as he said before, this was designed to improve their teamwork. These guys were nothing more than practice to them, and that's exactly how it felt. Like a group of straw men set up only to be knocked down as they had in the past when Juzo was first coming to understand how to wield the executioner. With what felt like a hot knife through butter, the palanquin was severed. And from within came the red, sticky liquid that Juzo remarked somehow reminded him of the feeling he got when cutting open a fried egg. They collected their prize. All right, now that we have this, we can be on our way. Itachi pulled out their map. We have our secondary mission to complete. This bridge here has been causing no end of trouble for this little settlement here, and there's a secret bounty put out on the termination of the bridge. Juzo nodded. Easy peasy. No guards, just rocks. A couple of rolls of paper bombs and the mission's complete. And so they made their way to the bridge where they would line it with explosives. Once they finished, they stepped a ways away and activated the bombs, blowing the bridge sky high. Easiest 30 grand I've made in my life, Juzo said as he made his way down the road to the settlement. There they picked up the reward for destroying the bridge before making their way to the bounty post. They offered proof of their kill and received a cool 3 million ryo. They then began making their way back to the Akatsuki base. Once they arrived, they made their way straight to Pain, who was waiting for them by the cliff's edge, watching as twilight slowly began to rise over it, the penumbra of the Earth's own shadow becoming increasingly visible as the planet continued to spin through space. Itachi let Juzo do all the talking. "We're back, boss, and we brought with us a cool 3,030,000 ryo. You did well," Pain stated. Taking the money from them, he informed them that he would have their cut calculated and delivered at his earliest convenience. From there, they were free to do whatever it was they pleased. Juzo went his own way, blade in hand, and Itachi decided to go check up on Sasuke. He came to Sasuke and Konan, and found Konan sitting in a chair with a bit of a smile on her face as Sasuke runs around wearing an Akatsuki cloak that appeared a million sizes too large. Itachi was not amused. Well, he was, because it was cute, but he wasn't amused with the concept of Konan trying to indoctrinate his brother into this life. He was afraid that Sasuke was forgetting the entire reason why they were there, which was to stop these people. Sasuke ran up to him. "Guess what, big brother?" Itachi smiled. "What is it, Sasuke?" Sasuke, eyes wide and very excited, spoke. "I've been doing some training with Miss Konan. Someday soon, I'll be able to go on missions with you." The idea of Sasuke going on missions with him was more than he was willing to accept. He had already ruined his own future, but Sasuke still had plausible deniability. He was a kid who hadn't done much of anything yet. If Itachi dropped him off at the gates of Konoha now, they would take him in with no second thoughts. After all, he was innocent and had done nothing criminal. They would call it a case of kidnap, escapee, and take care of him. But if he began going on missions for the Akatsuki, he would suddenly find his future closed to him, and that wasn't something Itachi was willing to let him go through with. But he smiled anyway. "Sounds like you're gonna get strong. Just promise not to leave me in the dust, okay?" Sasuke giggled and hugged Itachi. Itachi was glad to see Sasuke in good spirits. After everything that had happened, it was nice to see that Sasuke was capable of letting things roll off his back. But then again, he assumed that this was in no small part thanks to Konan. She had an air about her that seemed to say that she was treating Sasuke as if he were her own little brother. Looking around, it was clear that she had been teaching him arts and crafts to keep him occupied. He could tell which origami were made by Sasuke and which weren't based on how wrinkly the paper was. But he was getting there. He pat Sasuke's back and let Sasuke continue to play. Itachi would approach Konan. "I want to thank you for taking care of Sasuke for me. He seems to be doing better than he was when I left him." Konan did not lose her smile as she spoke to Itachi. "That's probably thanks to the origami I've been teaching him. They say that idle hands do the devil's work. Keeping him busy has helped his mood improve quite a bit." Itachi knew this to be true, but he believed things to be far simpler than that. Sasuke had taken a liking to Konan. Given that she was a woman much older than he was, it's likely that he had imprinted upon her some form of motherhood, searching for in her the things he could no longer find in his own late mother. And it seemed that Konan either knew that or was instinctively providing these things to him, which made Itachi wonder if she truly was cut out to be in a world as dark as this one. Her dyed hair and pierced lip gave off an emo vibe that hinted at darkness, but that was something totally different. She, like Pain, had known hardships, but her true self wasn't one of pain and suffering, nor was it one to be found in the darkness of the shinobi world. No, she was one who should be enjoying life in a village somewhere, protecting the innocence of children as opposed to what she was doing in this organization. Then again, some could have said the same of Itachi. He simply did not possess the malice to be truly cruel. He was a quick hand and precise, easy to defend itself and others, but one that offered mercy to those who were in need, regardless of the side they fought for. The whole ordeal was strange, especially considering that Sasuke was now being raised by criminals who surprisingly weren't doing that bad of a job. As Itachi spoke with Konan, none of them had noticed yet that Sasuke was no longer in the room with them. Itachi was the first to pick up on this. "Oh, it seems that Sasuke's wandered off. Perhaps I should go after him." Konan nodded as she stood. "It's probably best that I retire for the night. I bid you good day, Uchiha Itachi." Itachi bid her good day as well and began to wander off himself. "Sasuke," he called around the corner. There was no response. "Sasuke," Itachi called out, loud and authoritative, as if commanding him to show himself. There was still no response. Itachi began to get a bad feeling in the pit of his stomach. He walked around the base searching for his brother until he came to a darker corner near the barracks where they would sleep. There he saw Sasuke standing, a slight worried expression upon his face, his arms wrapped tightly around his plush as he seemed to take a step back. Before him was Orochimaru, who had knelt down to speak to Sasuke more at his level. Orochimaru smiled as he spoke and tried to sound as kind as possible. All the same, he couldn't disguise his darker nature, as well as his obvious ill intent. And whether it was because Sasuke was just sensitive to this sort of thing, or simply because he wasn't as naive as one might think a child would be, he was distrusting of this. "Hey," Itachi called out, stepping toward them. Sasuke looked back and saw him before rushing to his brother's side to hide behind his leg. Orochimaru came to his full height slowly, as if afraid that any sudden movements might set Itachi off. "What are you doing here with my brother?" Itachi demanded. Orochimaru gave a sly smile. "What? Am I not allowed to make small talk with a fellow Akatsuki member?" he said in reference to Sasuke's cloak. "Sasuke's off limits," he said to Orochimaru in a tone most menacing. "Quite the overprotective big brother. It's not like I was doing anything wrong. I was merely asking him about his personal life, trying to get to know him a little better." "We both know that's not true," Itachi said. "You're a snake. I know who you are and what you've done." Orochimaru scoffed. "Quite the judgmental one, aren't we? If you think you're any better than I am, you're sorely mistaken, clan killer." Itachi stood there resolute. "I'll say this, and I'll say it only once. Sasuke is off limits. If I ever see you near him, if I ever hear his name on your lips, if you even sneeze in his direction, I'll show you personally how I killed my clan." "Is that a threat?" Orochimaru asked. Itachi took a breath. "Come now. For someone as smart as you, do you need to ask such a question?" Orochimaru grit his teeth a little and prepared to speak, but then he noticed Konan in the background, watching all of this unfold. Orochimaru took another deep breath. "I suppose this is what I get for trying to be nice." He turned around and began to leave. Itachi turned to Sasuke and picked him up. "Are you okay?" Sasuke seemed a little shaken. "I don't like that man. He wants to do bad things to me," Sasuke said simply. "What, did he say something?" Sasuke shook his head, his declaration being based purely off of intuition. "I just know." Itachi held him close. "I won't let him hurt you, ever, okay?" Sasuke hid in Itachi's shoulder. Itachi turned his attention back toward the direction Orochimaru had gone. "Yeah, just mess around and find out, snake," he whispered to himself. He would then turn with Sasuke and walk away. Itachi was dead to the world. He was sprawled out on the bed, sleeping the sleep of the unjust as Sasuke was to the side, doing his own thing. He was folding paper into origami as he'd been shown by Konan. He was able to do a frog, a swan, and even recently he'd learned how to make a paper shuriken. He would flood the paper with his own chakra and then let loose a throw, causing it to smack against the wall, burying itself within. He then folded a shuriken as well. He was certain at this point that he had just found his new gimmick. "Paper shinobi," he said to himself. "I can be like Konan and Itachi." He planned his whole future out from his seat at the little children's arts and crafts table that Konan was so generous as to provide. Itachi let out a snore that caught Sasuke's attention. He smiled and walked over to the bed, crawling on top of the mattress. He took a small paper boat and sat it upon Itachi's nose. There was a snort as Itachi's right eye opened up to see Sasuke there, giggling at him. Itachi sighed and sat up. I'm up. He rubbed the sleep from his eyes. He looked around the room to find over 100 different origami creatures sitting around. "You've been busy," he said, looking at him. "How long have you been up?" 2 hours. Itachi was shocked. 2 hours? How many hours of sleep did you get? Sasuke started counting on his fingers. 9. Itachi was once again shocked, but this led to confusion. 9? He turned around and looked at the clock and noticed that it said it was noon. Wait, I slept until noon? But he thought about it. Was I really that tired? He suddenly realized that he had something to do. Oh, shoot. He scrambled out of bed and slipped on his sandals before grabbing his cloak. "Big brother's gotta go to a meeting. I'll be back." He exited the room and shut the door behind him. He rushed to Pain's war room. Pain turned back and looked at him. "You're an hour late." Itachi lowered his head in supplication for forgiveness. "I'm truly sorry. I overslept." Pain looked at him for a while. "We're behind schedule. Come over here and look at this." Itachi walked over and looked down at a map. It displayed Kirigakure. "Is this the next mission?" he asked. Pain nodded. Itachi thought about just how much Juzo was going to hate this. Pain began to explain that this was another assassination. This time it was going to be a high-up noble of Kirigakure. Itachi and Juzo were to attack under the cover of night, sneak into the estate, and kill the noble before heading out. They would take from them a memento, the ring on the noble's left index finger, as proof. They would receive their pay and then return to base. It was a simple job, but it had to be done by 6 a.m. the next day, and they needed to account for travel time. Itachi had really held up the mission. "I'll leave at once." Pain almost seemed to be staring a hole through him. He looked to Conan. "Could you please watch Sasuke?" Pain then spoke. "She is not the group babysitter. Sasuke will watch himself. Conan has a mission to accomplish as well in Amagakure." Itachi thought about it for a moment. He nodded. "As you wish, Lord Pain." He then turned around and made for his room. He stepped in and grabbed his gear. "I got a mission, Sasuke. Miss Conan won't be able to watch you today, so I need you to occupy yourself, okay?" Sasuke nodded. Itachi closed the door behind him and left. Itachi and Juzo were jumping from tree limb to tree limb. "I can't believe I'm back here. I would have taken literally any other job except this one," he said, the heavy blade strapped to his back, yet his hand was already tightly gripping the handle, as if he were expecting there to be a sudden ambush. Itachi was doing his best to keep up. Juzo looked to him. "Remember what I said. If it looks like I'm going to be captured, please, just kill me. I'm not going back there. I'd rather die." Itachi and Juzo had a bit of an understanding. Both were wanted men now, and if they were ever captured by their respective villages, it would be really bad. There were far worse fates than merely death that you could suffer for betraying your village. Juzo and Itachi had promised each other that if it seemed as if either of them would be captured, then one would kill the other. But Itachi had another request tacked onto that. Itachi had personally asked Juzo to take care of Sasuke for him. It was a lot to ask, but basically he told Juzo that should Sasuke never officially do any work for the Akatsuki, that he should return Sasuke to Konoha upon the event of Itachi's death. Juzo had thought this to be a strange request, given that Itachi was doing everything he could to stay away from that village, but Itachi explained that Sasuke hadn't done anything wrong yet, and they couldn't punish him for being kin to Itachi. "You hope not, at least," Juzo reminded him. Itachi would look down as they passed through the trees. "I certainly hope not." They would pass through the village hidden in the mist. "It's a simple mission, in and out. Remove the head and take the ring. Then we go to a pub just to the west of the Land of Water, on the Land of Fire's panhandle. There we exchange the ring for a whopping 2 billion ryo bounty," Itachi said. Juzo looked over. "Let's hope it's simple as that." They traveled through the night and land just outside of the estate. They jump the wall into the inner courtyard where the guards spot them and rush over. Itachi merely turns to lock eyes with them, causing each one to fall over. Juzo lands just behind. "Let's just get this over with," he said as he walks with Itachi to the village. There they find the man they were searching for. It was pathetically easy. The man was begging for his life, pleading with Juzo not to kill him. But Juzo had no mercy in his heart for this man. He would swing his blade, letting it cut through the air, severing the man in two. He would then take the ring from the bisected corpse and begin to make his way out. Just as before, they go over the wall. "See? Simple. Now let's get out of here," Itachi said. The two of them made their way toward the border when suddenly Juzo narrowly dodged an attack. Juzo and Itachi came to a stop and turned back to see what looked like a teenager standing before them, flanked on all sides with Kiri Hunter Nin. "I'm surprised to see you back in the Land of Water, Juzo," the boy said. "Trust me, it's not like I chose to come back here," he responded. Itachi looked at the various Hunter Nin surrounding them. "Who's this boy?" Juzo looked over. "He's the Mizukage." Itachi was slightly shocked. "Him? He can't be more than just a child." Juzo shook his head. "Don't be naive, Itachi. He's the Three-Tails Jinchuriki. He's practically united the entirety of the islands within the Land of Water under him. He's not a force to be trifled with." Yagata stood there. "You betrayed me, you betrayed your brothers, and you betrayed your village. What do you have to say for yourself, Juzo?" Juzo scoffed. "I don't have anything to say to you." "Oh? I have plenty I'd like to say to you," Yagata said simply. "Thing about that is, I feel like it would be lost on you, especially seeing how you're not going to live long enough to understand it." Juzo looks back at Itachi. "Remember what I told you. Do it." Itachi nods. Juzo pulls his blade, ready to face off against them all. Suddenly, Itachi slices Juzo in the back, startling everyone. He then uses fire style to burn the body. This, however, was merely cover, as Juzo and Itachi used the element of surprise to take out all of the Hunter Nin, leaving Yagata alone. But Yagata is a force to be reckoned with. He activates his version 2 cloak and fires bubbles at Itachi, planning to seize him up, which partially works. However, before he can hurt Itachi, Juzo knocks Yagata away. Yagata rolls and then gets back up on all fours. He begins to charge a tailed beast ball in his mouth. He fires it. Juzo sees it coming and knows that he can't dodge. If he does, it'll hit Itachi and kill him. The only thing he can do is repel it. He sees it coming at him, and so he grips his blade hard and swings it like a baseball bat. His blade connects with the tailed beast bomb. He pushes back against it. "Come on, baby, you can do it!" he shouts at his blade as he attempts to push it back. There's a sudden crack. Uh-oh! The bomb explodes with such force that it knocks Itachi away. Through the smoke, he sees Yagura forming another tailed beast bomb, and Itachi knows that if he allows this attack to be launched, both of them will die. So he activates his Mangekyo Sharingan and utilizes Amaterasu, which consumes Yagura and his version 2 cloak. Itachi is a little surprised that it's working, but isn't exactly disappointed. Yagura's cloak manages to save him from burning to death, but it does leave him heavily wounded. Yagura curses Itachi and then falls unconscious. Itachi lets out a sigh of relief. He turns to Juzo. You weren't kidding, he was really tough. As the smoke dissipates though, Itachi immediately realizes what has happened. Juzo's laying there against the tree. The executioner's blade has been shattered and a large portion of the blade had broken off, piercing Juzo's side. Itachi kneels down, his hands out as if he wants to somehow help, but Juzo lets off a little laugh, followed by an expulsion of blood from a cough.
You're not a medical nin, Itachi. Even if you were, I don't think you could save me.
Itachi pulled his hands back.
I'm done for,
Juzo said as he laid his head back. Itachi was sorrowful as he watched the man's life ebb away. They were fresh partners, but already he began to feel a bond with Juzo. Do you have any last words? Juzo looked up at Itachi.
Last words?
Itachi nodded. Do you have any last words that maybe you want me to impart to someone important to you? Juzo rolled his eyes.
I don't have anyone, Itachi.
He looked over.
But I suppose these thoughts must bear weight for you. After all, you do have someone important to you.
Itachi looked down. Juzo then spoke.
Remember when we were talking about human life and the value we put on it?
How we decide our own value? Yeah, I remember, Itachi said. Juzo looked down.
I never had much value when I was here in Kiri. I thought that becoming a member of the 7 Ninja Swordsmen would somehow impart to me more value, have people remember me. And I would have been. I could have even become Mizukage if I wanted to. Then everyone would have remembered me.
Then why didn't you? Itachi asked. Juzo looked over.
It all has to do with what we consider value in the first place. To be remembered, to be respected by an entire village, that's not value. Not to me.
Then what is value? Itachi asked.
Value is freedom. The fact that I can spend my own life, my own value on anything I desire. That is value. That is freedom. Freedom has a cost, and that cost is oftentimes paid in blood. I pay for freedom with my value, and now I'm all spent. But you know what?
What? Juzo smiled.
It was the best 12 cents I ever spent in my life.
Both Itachi and Juzo laughed. Itachi then spoke. Your life was worth far more than that to me, Juzo.
Oh? How much would you price me at?
Priceless. Juzo laughed again.
Again with that, Itachi? You're so naive, but I like that about you. To be able to die hand in hand with my 2 partners. That's the best way I can think to go out.
Juzo held in his right hand the handle of the executioner's blade, and in his other he held Itachi's.
Don't forget to take my ring when I die. That's your only responsibility as an Akatsuki member.
Itachi agrees to this. Find your rest in heaven, dear friend. Juzo smirks weakly at him.
Come on, Itachi. You know me. I'll be kicking ass across the fire plains of hell forever. And I expect to see you down there one day too.
Juzo then takes a deep breath and lets it out with a slight rattle, his head dropping down, his muscles relaxing. Itachi sat there for a moment more. He looked down at Juzo's hand and lifted it to take his ring. He clutched it tightly. There was no time to mourn, no time to bury him. All the time he had left, he had to spend making his way back to the Land of Fire to claim the bounty for he and Juzo both. And so he did. He took the politician's ring and turned it in for 2 billion, and then made his way back to the Akatsuki lair to turn in Juzo's ring. Pain looked down at it and spoke. I see. He lifted the ring up for a moment and looked at it before placing it in his pocket. I will give you both shares of the bounty in order to honor Juzo's sacrifice and your loss. You're dismissed. Itachi nodded and turned to walk away. He was tired from this. The sun was already rising and he was ready for sleep, just 1 day away. He expected Sasuke to still be asleep, though he surmised he would only be asleep for the next couple hours. It wouldn't really be enough for Itachi, but he would probably get up anyway. It had been quite a while since he had time to spend with Sasuke, and he didn't wish to waste it all sleeping. Itachi entered the room and removed his boots and cloak. He yawned and made his way over to the bed. He stopped for a moment before going in, his mind suddenly set ablaze with panic. Sasuke was not there. Sasuke! He stepped out of the room and looked around. Sasuke! He called out, wandering the base. He checked every room he was permitted to. Sasuke! He called out. Conan would eventually come around the corner, Pain nearby, his Rinnegan on Itachi. What's the issue? Conan asked. Itachi looked around. It's Sasuke, I can't find him. Conan looked back at Pain. Have you seen Sasuke? He shook his head. Itachi stood there for a moment silently. Has anyone seen Orochimaru recently? Conan looked back at Pain, who once more shook his head, this time a bit more slowly. Itachi would turn around and move to Orochimaru's bedroom. He would kick the door clean off its hinges. At this point, Sasori exits his own room to check on the commotion. Itachi steps in to find it empty, completely empty. Not even Orochimaru's personal items were there. Toby showed up by the door. Oh no! Has Itachi Jr. been kidnapped? Itachi looked back. Bastard took my little brother, he said, looking at Conan. Conan looked away. Pain's expression betrayed no emotion. He turned around and began walking back. What's the orders, boss man? Toby asked. Pain looked back. Spread out. Search for Orochimaru and Sasuke. Lethal force is authorized. Itachi ran back to his room and grabbed his cloak and his boots and put them on. Itachi would then leave the area, Conan by his side. The two of them would be searching for Sasuke together. The horrible thing was, Itachi didn't even know where to start. He couldn't sense them anywhere. He didn't know where Orochimaru would go. Itachi had no idea where to start his search. He could only imagine what Orochimaru might be doing to his little brother as he spoke. As soon as I find that snake, he's dead. I swear it. Conan looked over at Itachi for a moment and they kept searching. At some point in time, they decided to spread out. We'll cover more ground separately, Conan said. Itachi agreed, and so they went their own way. Itachi jumped from tree to tree, summoning his crows to cover the area he couldn't. But to his horror, he couldn't find anything. That was until he was suddenly stopped by Toby. Itachi stopped on a limb and glared at him. Toby then spoke in a much more controlled manner, using a far deeper voice. You're searching for Orochimaru. Honestly, we can't afford to let him escape with knowledge of our plan. He pulls from his cloak a map. This map will lead you to Orochimaru's many bases. If he's anywhere, he'd be there. He gives the map to Itachi. Itachi looks at the map and then looks up at Toby. The masked man speaks. Don't say I never did anything for you. Toby then disappeared as if he had never been there. Itachi looked at the map and then appeared before Conan via his crow clone. There, he told her about the map and the locations they had to check, and so this information spread out among the Akatsuki, with the Akatsuki then searching each of these locations. They would eventually find the last location on the map. He has to be here, Itachi said, less with confidence and more like he was trying to convince himself. Conan looked to Itachi. It's a rather large facility. Be careful. Itachi nodded. The two jumped down to ground level and entered the base. They ran through the corridors until they reached a split. Which way? Conan asked. Itachi looked left and then he looked right. You head west. I'll head east. We'll meet up if we find anything. Right. The two of them went their separate ways. Itachi raced down the halls. There were many rooms and many traps, but he managed to avoid them and continued on his way. He then heard a clamoring within a certain room. He opened the door and stepped inside, kunai in hand. It was dark. He reached out and flipped the light switch with his kunai, flooding the room with light. There were cages, and within those cages were multitudes of children. Itachi drew closer to these children and looked at them. He saw a computer nearby, each child cataloged on it. He began scrolling through and realized that each of these children possessed a unique Kekai Genkai. That's Itachi Uchiha, one of the children said. He killed all of the Uchiha clan. He's a murderer. Itachi's eyes lifted. He witnessed inside of the cage a young girl with bright Byakugan eyes, a Hyuga. She possessed a curse mark, but despite that, Orochimaru had still taken her. He knelt down in front of the children. Have any of you seen a boy around? One that looks a bit like me, named Sasuke. There was silence. Suddenly, one of them spoke. I saw a boy like that. He showed up here no more than a day ago. And what happened to him? Itachi asked. The doctor took him. Itachi was confused. The doctor? He thought about it. They must have meant Orochimaru. Where did the doctor take Sasuke? The kids looked around. Itachi was confused by this. Disappearing room? What's that? It's the room where the doctor takes kids and makes them disappear. Itachi's heart sank. Where is the disappearing room? The kids talked amongst themselves, conglomerating their knowledge into a coherent source of information. Down the hall, to the right. Itachi nodded. Thank you. He then turned and went back to the computer, typing something on it before pressing the enter button. Suddenly, there was a long, drawn-out beep, and the doors opened. The kids were confused. You're letting us go? Itachi pulled the doors open fuller. Of course. But you're a bad guy, the little girl with the Byakugan said. Itachi thought about it. Yes, I am. A very bad guy. But I enjoy the challenge of the hunt. So get out of the base as fast as you can and run as far as possible, because I'll be after you very soon. The children rushed out. Of course, Itachi wasn't planning to hunt these children. Far from it. He was letting them go, but if they thought that their lives were in imminent danger, maybe that would cause them to move a little faster, a little more carefully. Stepping out of the room, he remembered their directions and turned to the right. He went down the hall and took another right. There, at the end of the hallway, was a large room with 2 doors. Itachi stepped closer. He gripped his kunai tightly as he put his hand on the handle. He pushed them open and saw a large room full of various flasks and other scientific equipment. In the corner, there was another cage. This one possessed only one person. As Itachi drew closer to the boy, he heard crying. Itachi would come down to the cage and call in with a whisper, "Sasuke." There was no response. Itachi broke the chain holding the door closed. He opened the gate and reached in. "Sasuke!" As his hand touched his brother's shoulder, Sasuke cried out in terror, begging and pleading for his life. "No, no more, please, let me go home." Itachi halfway crawled into the cage with him. "Sasuke, it's me. The boy calmed a bit. "Itachi, is that you?" Itachi seemed confused. "Yes, you can't tell?" Sasuke curled up in his arms. "Itachi." Itachi looked down at him. "Couldn't you see me?" "I don't think he can," another voice said. Holding Sasuke in his arms, he turned around to see Orochimaru standing in the doorway, his eyes glowing a crimson red, each one bearing a red flower pattern within. Itachi shuddered, feeling a shiver run down his spine. He looked down to realize that there was dried blood around Sasuke's eyes. The lids were a tad more sunken than usual. Itachi felt as if his blood had just come to a boil. "You!" He turned to Orochimaru. "What did you do?" Orochimaru shrugged. "Merely a little experimentation." Itachi was so upset. He had never been this angry in his entire life. You blinded my little brother, took his eyes for yourself, and then you dare look at me with them? You dare show your face to me?" Orochimaru smiled. "To be honest, I hoped to take yours, Itachi, but I came to realize that doing such a thing would be far too difficult for me to accomplish as I was. But luckily, you brought with you your little brother, and lo and behold, he also possessed Mangekyou's Sharingan. Far fresher, too, less wear and tear." Itachi sat Sasuke down. "Cover your head, Sasuke." Sasuke slowly moved his arms up to cover his head as he pulled his legs up behind cover. Itachi stepped out. "You're not as smart as I thought, Snake. To do what you've done and then flaunt it." Itachi would suddenly cast Amaterasu, but Orochimaru would counter with Kagutsuchi, simply pushing the flames away. Itachi would attempt Tsukuyomi, but Orochimaru would simply negate it with his own knowledge of Genjutsu, as well as his preferred Mangekyou Sharingan. Itachi was surprised. Suddenly, Orochimaru used Amaterasu as well. Itachi's cloak would be set ablaze. Itachi would roll to the side and discard it. He would then throw a set of kunai at Orochimaru. Orochimaru would dodge and send a volley back. Itachi would throw another kunai. This one would strike one of Orochimaru's shuriken and would then bounce off them, deflecting before being sent at Orochimaru. Orochimaru barely dodged it, ending up with a cut upon his cheek. Before he even had time to wipe the blood, Itachi was on top of him, striking out at him with all the taijutsu knowledge he had. It was an impressive amount of skill, but Orochimaru was no slouch, being one of the 3 Sannin. Itachi was pushed back. He stood there, ready to retaliate again when suddenly he fell to his knees. An unusual feeling. Suddenly he coughed and blood was flushed from his chest. He looked down to see if this was somehow related to a wound, but he realized he wasn't hurt. So what was this? Orochimaru seemed equally surprised, but at the same time he was pleased. Orochimaru would summon Sasuke's Lavender Susanoo. It would stand above Orochimaru, ready to strike him. Itachi would kneel there. A moment later, he summoned his Crimson Susanoo. Orochimaru, who felt he had the advantage, stepped forward to attack, but how wrong he was. Perhaps Sasuke's Sharingan had the abilities that ran counter to Itachi's own, but the one thing Sasuke didn't have that Itachi did were weapons. The Yata Mirror. No matter what jutsu Orochimaru cast, all attacks were useless against this Susanoo. Itachi drew closer and clashed with Orochimaru. Suddenly, Itachi broke through and landed on top of his opponent. Itachi's eyes were bleeding as he looked down at Orochimaru, who gazed up at him in horror. "Those aren't yours," Itachi said as he plunged his thumbs in through the tear duct. He removed Sasuke's Mangekyou Sharingan from Orochimaru's head. As he stood there over him, Itachi utilized his Susanoo's blade of Tatsuka to seal Orochimaru away, unable to live or die, existing forever in a blind, drunken state where logic could neither be seen nor understood. How fitting. He would then return to Sasuke and pick him up. He would rush out with the boy, calling Konin. He would inform her of what had happened, and the two would rush back to the Akatsuki base. "Are you so sure you wish to do that?" a voice asked. Itachi looked up to see Tobi standing there. "What do you want?" Tobi held out a hand to calm Itachi. "I'm asking if you really want to return those eyes to him." "Of course," Itachi said, disgusted with the question. Tobi sighed. "And here I thought you would want him to grow stronger through eternal Mangekyou Sharingan." Itachi looked up. "What?" Tobi looked back. "Oh, do I have your interest? What do you mean? Itachi asked. Toby began to explain. If two blood-related Uchiha both awaken Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan and then trade them, it awakens the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, a more powerful variant that doesn't go blind through usage. Itachi was confused. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to grow stronger. I want you and Sasuke both to grow strong. If you both are strong, then our goal grows a little closer. Sasuke isn't joining the Akatsuki. Toby stood there silently. Perhaps he will, perhaps he won't. But you will be stronger, and you'll have your brother to thank for that. And your brother, he can use them to defend himself perfectly without your help. You won't have to worry about him as much. But what do I know? I'm just the most powerful Uchiha to ever exist. Toby then disappeared. Itachi sat there for a moment and looked down at Sasuke, who was still shaking in his arms. Madara had made a few good points. Itachi sighed. Sasuke, he said in a calming voice. Would you like to do that? What? Itachi explained to him what Madara had just told him. If you do this, I will have your eyes, and you'll have mine. We'll always be together because there will always be a part of us in the other. Your Mangekyo will never go blind. You'll be so strong you won't need to worry about me protecting you. Can I protect you? Sasuke asked. Itachi nodded. Yes, you will be able to protect me. Silence ensued for a moment. So, what do you think? Sasuke thought about it for a moment. I want to do it. Itachi pat his head. Then let's do it. And that's exactly what they did. They both went in, and instead of putting Sasuke's Sharingan back, they transplanted Itachi's into Sasuke, and Sasuke's into Itachi's. It took some healing time, but that was okay. Itachi needed rest, and the Akatsuki needed time to help him find a new partner. Konan would be nearby too, helping keep Sasuke occupied. Eventually, the healing process was over, and when the bandages came off, their Mangekyo Sharingan had evolved further. The two looked into each other's eyes, a bond so powerful that it went beyond words. The Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, the proof of the bond between two brothers. The bed felt so hard. Itachi was hardly dreaming at all, only faint outlines like line art in the black canvas of his mind's eye. It felt like an elephant were sitting on top of him. His body ached, pained. It was almost agonizing. He felt a searing hot pain on his right arm. It hurt so badly. He suddenly opened his eyes. The pain he felt was not searing hot. It wasn't even pain at all. In fact, it was nothing more than a hand on his arm. He sat up and rubbed his eyes. What is it? He asked as he looked around, half expecting to see Sasuke. No, it wasn't just Sasuke. There were others in the room. Konan was there, seeming a little worried. By her side was Pain, and to the side was Sasuke, watching in the arms of Konan. Beside Itachi was Zetsu, whose two sides caused him to appear as a yin and yang symbol enshrouded in vines. Itachi could not respond. He looked around. Oh, have the bandages come off already? That was fast. Nobody responded. Itachi was now more than just a little confused. What's going on? You've been asleep, Itachi, Pain said. Itachi nodded. I have been. I've been busy. I'm a little tired. Pain shook his head. No, you haven't just been asleep for a while. You've not woke up in days. Itachi was confused. Days? You didn't wake up after we removed the bandages, Sasuke said. I thought you needed to sleep more, so I stayed and played with Konan. But how many days have I been out? Itachi asked. Konan opened her mouth to speak. 5 days. Itachi's eyes widened. 5? Zetsu then spoke. It seems that there's an underlying issue. Sasuke told me you'd coughed up blood during a battle with Orochimaru. Itachi nodded. Zetsu, with that ever-aberrant smile on his face, spoke with a voice as light as a choir soprano. It seems you have a chronic illness. Do you perhaps have a history of illness? Maybe in your family history? Itachi shook his head. Pain then speaks. You're no use to us if you're ill. You should attempt to get this sorted. We'll give you sick leave. Find a physician you can trust and ask them what it is that you're sick with, and better yet, how to cure it. Pain then left the room. Itachi looked to Zetsu, who continued smiling, as if he were somehow pleased with the idea of Itachi's possible medical condition. Get better now. He then sorta just melted into the floor. The only ones left were Sasuke and Konan, with the latter keeping the former close for comfort. I would recommend that you head to Amagakure. Pain and I actually govern that village, so you'll be safe and get a proper physical from a trustworthy physician. And don't worry about the payment. If they know you work with Pain, they'll do it for free. Are you sure about that? Itachi asked. I wouldn't want to impose. Konan shook her head. Pain will cover the bill if the doctor insists. Consider it company healthcare benefits. Just be sure to figure out why you've been sleeping so much and bleeding so much too. She pat Sasuke's shoulder and then turned around and walked out the door to give the two their privacy. After she left, Sasuke was left standing there with his stuffed animal in his arms. He walked over to Itachi with the most concerned look on his face. Are you gonna be okay? He asked. Itachi pushed the visible worry from his face and smiled. I'm sure of it. He lifted Sasuke into his lap. We're gonna go to a doctor just to make sure. He would then help Sasuke pack his bags. It's not like they had much to take with them, but anything they had procured from the Akatsuki in the way of supplies, or anything Itachi had bought with his payment he got from his work, they packed up. This included extra paper to keep Sasuke occupied. As Itachi helped Sasuke pack, he came across a small picture Sasuke had drawn. It was a rough picture of himself, Itachi, and Juzo standing together, all wearing Akatsuki cloaks. The picture had the caption "Triple Threat" on it. Must have been a name Sasuke had come up with. Now Juzo was gone, and Itachi was worried about his own health. He would continue packing before grabbing his own supplies, which mostly pertained to extra funds, weapons, food, and water. After this, the two headed out. They began to make their way down the road to the west to get to Amagi. It was a long trek, and to be frank, he worried Sasuke would not be able to handle it. So they hitched a ride with a wagon train carrying supplies. Sasuke asked where they were going, and they were both surprised to hear that this wagon was on its way to bring supplies from out of the village to Ame. Despite the secretive nature of Amagakure, they needed to continue to trade. As they rode the wagons, Itachi thought about the nature of this. Ame was generally a place where nobody was allowed in or out without special papers. It seemed that despite being such a big village, it could not survive on its own. In the end, capitalism was what determined whether a state survived or not. Looking at the faces of the merchants who tried their best to avoid eye contact with Itachi, more than willing to serve him hand and foot, it became clear even before entering the village that the place held an atmosphere of fear. Amagakure was controlled by Pain with an iron fist, and this was the fate of all lands that would fall under Pain's control, peace through fear. It began to cause Itachi to wonder what Juzo saw in the Akatsuki. He valued freedom so much. Even if he preferred personal freedom, he valued it nonetheless. How could he willfully desire to bring others under the control of Pain? Pain would diminish the value of the human life. To make peace free, he needed to sacrifice human value. This would make freedom far too expensive to buy, and thus, freedom died, sacrificing freedom for security. Itachi grew tired of this same old song and dance. He understood that sometimes happiness needed to be sacrificed for security or for the freedoms of others, but this was a totally different case. He looked back and saw that Sasuke was now wearing an Akatsuki cloak that had been properly tailored to his size. Itachi hated seeing him wear that tacky cloak, but he said nothing about it. As the wagon train pulled into the village, the guards were to stop the wagon to search it and ensure that there were no stowaways on board. Of course, there was Itachi and Sasuke. The moment the guards saw them, however, they apologized and told the wagoners to be on their way. The gate opened and they were pulled into a sprawling cyberpunk world. The constant deluge set a tone of drama over the city, to which one almost expected to hear threatening yet heroic trumpet fare to mark the arrival of some avenger of justice. Surely if Kagemasa existed, this would be the site of his adventures, Itachi thought. As they went deeper, they passed through the market district and into a back alley where the store's back entrances and storage areas were. Itachi got off and grabbed Sasuke. He then walked over to the one who had been steering the wagon and thanked him for his help before asking where the most reputable doctor in all of Ame was. "Oh, the best doctors are toward the center of the city, where Lord Pain's palace is." The two of them made their way toward the center of the city, where Pain's palace would be sitting high above all other buildings, like a personal skyscraping spire to which he could echo out his control like an antenna. As he asked around, they all pointed him to a small clinic. It was strange to Itachi that the most prevalent doctor should work out of a home clinic, but he came to believe that the reason why this was so was because the old man did not care to be rich, nor did he care about status. The man must have been passionate about his profession, and as Itachi entered the little clinic with the ringing of a bell overhead, you could tell it was true. There was a proper waiting area, albeit small. Itachi walked up to a little window and tapped the top of a bell to draw attention to himself. Suddenly, a woman appeared from behind the window. She was in casual clothes and seemed somewhat elderly. Itachi would ask if the doctor were in, and the kind woman would say that he was, and that he'd be with them shortly. Itachi walked over and sat down in a chair by Sasuke and watched him play a little. He was wondering whether he wanted Sasuke in the room with him or not during the exam. The doctor walked in, an elderly man in casual wear and a white coat. It was now obvious to Itachi that the receptionist was the man's wife, and that this clinic was a real mom and pop type clinic in the most literal of terms. Itachi stood up and grabbed Sasuke's hand. As they went, Sasuke swiped a coloring book and crayons. They followed the doctor to the back. There was only one room with which they could perform examinations. Despite that, there was official equipment of very high quality, and due to the overwhelming scent of bleach, Itachi knew that the room and its equipment must be sterile. Sasuke just sorta took a seat out of the way and began to color. The doctor watched him for a moment and then turned to Itachi. "They recruit them younger and younger, it seems." He was grabbing his tools. He then came to Itachi and began opening the bag. "I hope you don't mind my nervousness. I rarely have a chance to tend to Lord Pain's personal, not sure as to what you would call it. Unit?" The doctor raised a finger and waggled it in the air as his attention remained on the bag. "That's the word for it. Once he was sure of all of his items inside the bag, he set it on a table beside Itachi. "So, can you tell me what's wrong?" Itachi then began to tell him. "I've been sleeping for longer and longer periods of time. I seemed to go comatose for about 5 days earlier this week, which was unusual. Have you been sleeping well?" Itachi shook his head. The doctor nodded. "Well, perhaps you're simply tired. Some medical journals have stated that the body doesn't catch up on sleep in the way that we used to think. But from my experience, when one goes without sleep for so long, the body tends to compensate by sleeping longer and longer. 5 days is quite a bit, however, though I assume in your profession, days without any rest or with little rest is the norm." Itachi nodded. "That was my belief as well, but it's not the only symptom. In times where I must exert myself, I just don't seem to have the stamina I had previously. And when I push myself even a little, I end up vomiting blood." The doctor's eyes widened in shock to such a violent escalation in symptoms. "Wow, that's pretty extreme. Well, let's see if we can't find out what's wrong. Please remove your coat. You can sit it over there on the rack if you desire." Itachi would do so, and the doctor would proceed to run various tests on Itachi's body, starting with the non-invasive ones on the outside before moving to the slightly more invasive tests, generally to take a sample of blood or chakra. Finally, to make sure everything was okay, the doctor channeled some of his chakra into a certain machine that would quickly imprint upon a type of film that could image the chakra as it passed through the body. With this, the doctor was able to determine what the internal biological systems looked like inside of Itachi. After various extra and extensive tests that took enough time for Sasuke to have colored through half the book, the doctor invited Itachi to take up his coat and sit by him at the desk. Itachi did so, and also took up Sasuke with him, who was tiring of his coloring. Itachi sat down, sitting Sasuke on his lap. "Do you have a diagnosis?" Itachi asked. The doctor sat there for a second. "The inside of your body does seem to possess various forms of scarring within both the alveoli of your lungs as well as the starts of what looks to be ulcers in your stomach, so something is definitely wrong here. However, none of the tests I did for you seem to provide a cause as to why they're doing such things. I ran your blood and chakra through almost every test, and there doesn't seem to be any official cause for why your body seems to be attacking itself. I apologize that I could not find the answer for you, but I'm not going to leave you high and dry. I have some other doctors that I can recommend to you who might be able to tell you more than I've got. And as an apology for wasting your time, I won't charge you for mine." Itachi shook his head. "No, you will be paid. You did a fine job." The doctor waved it off. "Anything for one of Lord Pain's subordinates." And there it was again, the fear that the name Pain induced upon everyone. Sasuke stood and sighed. "Well, thanks again anyway." Itachi would ensure that this man was paid properly for his time. After this, Itachi would go about to other doctors that had been recommended to him and would give them all the information he had gathered, what he had experienced, and what the doctors before him had said, seeking a true answer. In the end, all of the doctors had the same inconclusive answer, though one said it could be a psychological condition, though one to this extent they had never seen before. And with that, Itachi left, having exhausted all of the doctors he could trust. He and Sasuke began to return home, but as they reached the base, they'd be stopped by Tobi. "I've heard you've come up with something," he said in a voice as deep and smooth as butter. Itachi looked to him. "What do you know about it?" "You think I know anything about your illness?" Tobi asked. Itachi's eyes narrowed. "You always seem to know everything, so why not this, too?" Though his mouth couldn't be seen, his smile was detectable in his single visible Sharingan, burning in the void beyond his mask's single port. "You know me so well, Itachi. Indeed, I may have something on it." Itachi stood there, listening intently. "As it turns out, in my younger years, during the Warring States period, I went through something not too dissimilar, though definitely not at this level. It was caused by the same thing that had awakened my Mangekyo Sharingan." "You mean?" Tobi, currently speaking as Madara, nodded. "Hatred itself. The Sharingan is awakened by emotion, but only hatred can awaken the Mangekyo. My disease went away though, after I achieved the eternal Mangekyo." Itachi's face showed anger and disappointment. "I already awakened the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan." Tobi raised a hand to slow him down. "I haven't finished talking." He then continued. "It wasn't the Mangekyo Sharingan that was killing me. It was the hatred itself. It eats away at you like a cancer. That's what hatred does. But all the same, we're shackled to it. The more pain one causes, the worse the body becomes until it's completely devoured." "How come I've never heard of this?" Itachi asked. "You've never heard of it because it's rare for an Uchiha to cause enough bloodshed to generate this much hatred. But it isn't just any hatred that causes this illness. No, it's self-hatred. Hatred born of guilt. So long as you cling to the part of you that feels love for those you've hurt, you'll always suffer from this until eventually it kills you." Itachi didn't have a good feeling. He felt like this was going somewhere it shouldn't. Tobi continued. "The only way to rid yourself of this illness is to kill the part of yourself that clings to love. It's either love or hate, Itachi. It can't be both. You must decide. But until that time, I might have something that'll help." What is it? Itachi asked. There's a village up in the mountains near Ame known for medicine. Go there and seek the Koran family. Ask for Kotaro. They will give you a choice of 3 types. Choose course. That should at least slow down the effects of the illness until you can decide what to do with yourself. Itachi sighed. I wish you would have told me this earlier. I was all over that region before making the long way home. Tobi's single visible eye rolled. He grabbed Itachi's shoulder despite Itachi's protests and would portal them through dimensions until they arrived at where they were going. Remember, seek the Koran clan. Ask for course Kotaro. And never say I didn't do anything for you. Tobi would then disappear again. Together, Sasuke and Itachi would venture into the village. There they would seek out the Koran clan. Asking about it, it seemed that the Howling Wolf Village, as it was called, held disdain for this clan. Despite this, looking at their cloaks, they assumed that they were bounty hunters and the like, and regardless of what they planned to do with the Koran, they told them exactly where to find them. They were within a small shop called Rengyodo. Itachi found it to be a very odd thing that this village would hold disdain for what could be assumed to be skilled pharmacists, but he wasn't here to judge. He was here for medicine, and so he would visit this pharmacy. Entering the building, he was surprised by the fact that it was run by a child. He looked around. Is the store's owner here? One of the children, who couldn't have been much older than Sasuke, spoke. You're looking at him. Itachi sat Sasuke down. You run Rengyodo? The boy nodded. Things weren't adding up in Itachi's mind, and the boy was perceptive enough to notice this. I didn't found the place, I simply own it now. It was willed to me by my father, Tenma Kodan. I'm Reishi Kodan. The boy extended a hand. Pleasure. Itachi took the hand of the child and shook it. The pleasure's mine. He then looked around. Is this place really a pharmacy? The boy nodded. Always has been, always will be. Can I do something for you? Itachi returned his attention to the small host. I was told to ask for Kotaro to solve a medical condition I have. The boy nodded and led Itachi to the counter. Itachi began to explain the issues he'd been experiencing, and the boy seemed to understand. Sounds like you'll need course Kotaro. The boy walked over and began working on it. I assume you're Uchiha then. Itachi was slightly shocked. Yeah. How did you know? My father told me about it. He said that during the Third Shinobi World War, a lot of Uchiha became patrons here. This illness seems to be born from their Sharingan, or something similar. We've served them ever since, though you're the first one I've seen in a while. Is everything okay? Itachi sat down. There was an incident in the Hidden Leaf, an uprising that resulted in the genocide of my clan, save myself and my brother. The boy stopped mixing for a moment and looked over his shoulder. You have my condolences. He continued mixing up the formula. It truly is a shame. While I would admit that they had their issues, I've never seen shinobi with hearts as big as theirs. Rare these days. The world will be all the dimmer for it. Thank you for saying that, Itachi said, surprised by the maturity of this child. Considering that the boy said the place was willed to him by his father, Itachi assumed that these children didn't have parents anymore, and that Reishi had to grow up quite quickly. Looking over, Itachi noticed that Sasuke seemed to be playing with another boy who could have been no older than 3. That's my kid brother, Kina, Reishi said as he finished preparing the Kotaro. He's a little too young to help out around the shop, but one day I believe he'll be one of the best pharmacists in the entire village. He handed a vial of eye drops to Itachi. Itachi looked at them and failed to hide his fearful and skeptical expression. The boy chuckled. Don't worry, Mr. Uchiha. I measured twice. You're not gonna overdose. Itachi smiled awkwardly and decided to take the boy's word for it. Either this would extend his lifespan or kill him. Either way, there was only one path forward, and it was this Kotaro. Itachi would hold the dropper above his eye and then hold the lids open before dropping some in. He would repeat this process a second time for the other eye. He would then sit there for a moment. He didn't feel anything. Should I? Suddenly his vision began to grow dimmer. He gripped at the chair he was sitting in as light seemed to fade from the world around him. Holy, I'm blind. I'm blind. Reishi began to put his hands on Itachi's to calm him. He shushed him. But by this time, Sasuke was on him in a flash. Whipping out some rather impressive judo, he put Reishi on the floor and then pinned him. What did you do to my brother? What is this poison? Give him the antidote or I'll rip your arm off. Reishi was panicking a little and Kina was crying in the background. Calm down, Reishi shouted. It's supposed to do that, it's supposed to do that. Itachi reached out into the darkness and found Sasuke's collar and pulled him from Reishi. Explain, please, Itachi said. Reishi rose up from his position and he went in to check on Kina to calm him down. It's course Kotaro. Did you expect it to have 0 side effects? Side effects? Itachi asked. Reishi nodded. Side effects. Course Kotaro is our strongest. Strong benefits, strong side effects. Don't worry, the blindness is temporary, but the benefits are well worth the dosage. Trust me. Why didn't you tell me about the side effects before? Itachi asked. If you had, I could have waited until I had gotten home to take it. Reishi stood there a little embarrassed at his amateurish blunder. You didn't ask? Itachi sighed. Let's just consider ourselves lucky that I'm not on a tight schedule, but next time you should lead with the side effects. Yes, Mr. Uchiha. Sorry, Mr. Uchiha. Sasuke's mood was obviously soured at this point, so time would pass and they would wait for the side effects to wear off. Once they had, they paid for the Katara, were sure to get detailed instructions, and they went to return home. Once they got there, they were met by Pain. Welcome back, Itachi. I assume you have dealt with the issue. Itachi thought about it. I found a way to manage it for now, I think. Pain seemed less excited about this answer. Are you fit for duty? Itachi nodded. I believe I am. Pain let him in. You will get the day off today to rest and prepare. Tomorrow, you set out to help recruit the newest member of our organization. For now, I think you should get to know your new partner, Kisame Hoshigaki. Itachi bowed in respect. Yes, Lord Pain. Pain then turned back to a table covered in maps and other things. You are dismissed. Itachi would return with Sasuke to the room where he would sit him down on the bed and remove his shoes. I'll get us something to eat, then you can rest. I'll go talk to my new partner during that time. As Itachi turned around to go, he was stopped once more by Konan, who held another platter. I thought you might be hungry, she said with a smile. Itachi was surprised. This was his and Sasuke's favorite foods. He was awestruck. Thanks, he said. But how did you know? Konan pointed to Sasuke. When I was watching him, he told me about all your favorite food and told me that his was like yours, something your mom used to make as a bit of a comfort meal, and well, I thought you guys could use a comfort meal. She then proceeded to wave at Sasuke, who waved back in a very flamboyant way. Itachi smiled. Thank you so much. You really don't know how much this actually means to me. He looked back at Sasuke, and then he looked to Konan. Would you like to maybe come in and eat with us? And so the three had their lunch together. After this, Itachi decided to go and find Kisame, where the two would attempt to get to know each other better. As it turned out, they both had a bit of a traumatic history, as both had to kill some of their own countrymen. Kisame, like Juzo, had been a member of the 7 Ninja Swordsmen of the Mist, but instead of carrying around the Executioner's blade, his was Samehada. The two spoke and got along well, with Itachi finding Kisame to be the kind of man he could trust. Like Juzo, he had honor, so he knew he could rely on Kisame in a pinch. With this, he'd rest for the night. The next day, however, they were set to leave, but they were not alone. They were sent along with Sasori, the legendary puppet master of the sand. Together, they made for the Hidden Stone's outskirts. A rogue shinobi for his bomb-making skills was there, Deidara. They found themselves flanked on either side by tall trees, and in the orange embers of twilight, they witnessed a small shrine in the distance. It had come to be the home of this rogue shinobi, it seems. They would enter. There, they'd be found by their target. He would question them, and they'd make it clear that they were there to recruit him into the Akatsuki. While Sasori admired his spunk, he thought he seemed to be the early death type. Itachi considered Sasori's statements, as Sasori was the one who'd be teamed up with him. But in the end, what mattered most was that they followed orders from Pain, and so they attempted to get Deidara to join them. Initially, he refused, but after some persuasion by Itachi and his Sharingan, he joined. He'd be welcomed by the rest of the Akatsuki, and as they would leave, Tobi would take Itachi to the side. Have you thought about your illness? Itachi looked to him. It's all I've been thinking about. Then perhaps you're ready to get rid of it. You could truly be the strongest shinobi to ever live, even stronger than I. You could bring peace to the world if only you were capable of letting go. Letting go of what? Itachi asked. The single visible eye glowed like an ember of flame behind the mask. Your past, the one thing you hold on to, and the one thing you love most. Itachi understood. Sasuke. Tobi nodded slowly. Throw away what remains of your humanity and become more. Kill your little brother and accept hatred. So long as he lives, your love will cling to something. That war within your body is what's causing your illness. A war in your conscience. Your body is collateral damage. Itachi went to strike Madara in the face only for his hand to pass harmlessly through and splinter the wood behind him. From this, Madara did not even shift his body. Didn't even flinch. Itachi just pulled his bloody fist back. Madara sighed. So dramatic. It's not like I'm going to kill him. This is your choice to make, and I don't care what choice you make. I'm merely telling you the truth according to my experience. As long as my brother Izuna lived, I was sick. When he died and I took his eyes, I was healed. The eternal Mangekyo Sharingan did not heal me. The loss of the last thing I loved did. Sacrifice your brother and live, or spare him and die. It's not like he'll have much of a future in this organization anyway, especially without you. Tobi then began walking away, leaving Itachi alone with his thoughts. Itachi sat down on the shrine steps and thought this through. How cruel. He wasn't being punished for killing his clan, he was being punished because he didn't finish the job. How is he supposed to make that decision? His brother or his life? No, it wasn't a hard decision at all. He killed his clan for Sasuke, and he'd be willing to die for him as well. Returning to the base though, the remainder of what Tobi had said to him continued to ring out. It's not like he'll have much of a future in this organization anyway, especially without you. As Itachi walked through the base, he saw that the Geto statue was gone. Where did it go? He asked Conan. She looked up at the empty place where the statue once stood. Pain moved it. We're leaving this base. Now that we've got a team together, we're gonna start to achieve our goals. The tailed beasts. Itachi looked down. Conan, She looked to him. What is it? He sighed. I don't know if I can do it. She stepped closer to him. You've already sworn yourself to pain. You can't get out of it now. Itachi shook his head. No, I don't mean me. I mean Sasuke. She listened to him intently as he continued. I'm sick, Conan. Terminally ill. The only way for me to live is to sever everything I love, which means killing Sasuke, but I can't do that. I'm going to die, and I've made my peace with that, but I can't let Sasuke grow up as a member of the Akatsuki. I can't let his future be taken from him just by my own selfishness. Pain told me so earlier. He asked me if I did this for me or for him. I did it for me and lied to myself about it. He'll have no future if he stays with me. Conan looked down. You know, I really did like having the little fella around. So you'll help me? Itachi asked. Conan nodded. If Pain asks, I'll tell him. You won't see retaliation. Itachi almost began to cry. Thank you. And so, as night came, Itachi would go to Sasuke, who was sleeping. He would wake him up. Sasuke. Sasuke. The boy would sit up in bed. Itachi? Itachi smiled at him as he gently, lovingly pushed the boy's wild hair out of his face. It was everything he could do to keep it together. Would you like to go on a mission with me and Conan? It's a special mission that only we can do, and I want you to be a part of it. Sasuke's eyes widened and he couldn't hide his smile. I get to go on a mission with big brother and big sister? Poggers! Itachi snickered at this. Come, let's get your official uniform on. He would help Sasuke get his boots on as well as his cloak and help him pack up everything he had. He would put the boy on his back and together they would leave with Conan. Under cover of night, the three would take to the treetops, making their way toward Konoha. He'll be protected, Itachi kept saying to himself. Hiruzen will protect him. As they traveled, it seemed like night might never end, but at the same time, it felt like the night was not long enough. He knew that chances were this was the last time he would ever see his little brother. Itachi would have to leave, and by the time this all ended, he would likely be dead. But such a pain, such a love, it was worth dying for. His little brother was worth dying for. Juzo once spoke of the value of human life, and the worth of that life only being what one was willing to spend on it. And right now, Itachi had decided. His life was worth Sasuke's life. As they came to the gates, Itachi knelt down. Conan helped Sasuke get off his brother's back. What's the mission? Sasuke asked. Itachi raised his hand to his lips. Sasuke recognized his mistake and began to whisper. What's the mission? Itachi looked at his little brother as tears started to form in his eyes. The mission is you. Sasuke was confused. Huh? Itachi smiled through the streaming tears. The mission is you. It's always been you. He then pushed more hair away from Sasuke's face, not particularly because it threatened his vision, but simply because Itachi wanted an excuse to brush his brother's hair to the side one last time. The past few months that we've spent together, there's so much more than I've ever deserved. Slowly, Sasuke's expression started to change, his eyes widening as his eyebrows began to slant on the furthest ends. Itachi. Itachi saw this and felt his own heart cracking. The shinobi who had trained himself to never cry, the shinobi who managed to kill his whole clan without expressing emotion, was now unable to keep the tears from falling down. His heart was shattering into a million pieces. Sasuke, I can't let you be a member of the Akatsuki. There's no future for you there, and he looked back at Conan. She stepped away from them for a moment after understanding what Itachi wanted. Itachi looked back to Sasuke and whispered it to him. I'm not really a member of the Akatsuki. I'm only spying on them for the leaf, but I'm worried that I'm going to damage your future and lead you to becoming like me. I'm sick, Sasuke, and if I die, I don't want to leave you abandoned with a group I don't believe in, doing work I don't believe in, only so you can die or have no future at all. Sasuke was already crying, though he was holding it together. Mr. Hiruzen will take care of you, I promise. Sasuke's tears were flowing liberally now. Itachi wiped them to the side as his own voice began to shake. You'll make lots of friends, and you'll be happy, and you can do whatever you want. It's fun, and every night we'll pray for each other, and I'll take time to look at the North Star, so as you sleep, we'll be looking at the same one. Sasuke raised his little hand and wiped away Itachi's tears. The false smile Itachi was holding shattered under the weight of those little loving fingers. Sasuke, you don't know how much I truly love you. No, Sasuke said. I do know how much you love me. I just wish you would let me stay with you. I'd rather have no future at all than have one without you in it. Itachi pulled him into a hug. I'll be in it. I'll always be in it. You may not see me, but I'll be there. I promise. Itachi would suddenly call a crow to him. This crow possessed a Mangekyou Sharingan. This crow is named Wotan, and anytime you see it or hear its caw, you'll know that I'm nearby. Sasuke nodded. Itachi looked back at Conan. She took the signal and walked over to him. She knelt down to the boy and ruffled his hair. It's been fun, shortstop. I wish we could stay friends, Miss Conan, Sasuke said through his tears, attempting to smile, but failing horribly. Her breath caught in her throat. She almost lost her own composure. She kissed his cheek. What are you talking about, Sasuke? We'll always be friends. Friends stay friends no matter how far away. And so, as long as you remember the origami I showed you, we'll always have a connection. And don't be surprised if you wake up one day and find a bouquet of origami flowers outside your door. No matter how far apart we are, we'll always be together. Sasuke hugged her, and with that, she lost her own composure. The notoriously inexpressive shinobi had finally made a new expression. She hadn't smiled like this since Yahiko. She hadn't cried like this since him either. You're gonna be okay, Sasuke. You're strong, smart, and just like your big brother. Look out, world, cause nothing's gonna get in your way. She wiped his tears and then presented him with an origami butterfly made of red paper. He took it into his hand. Just like your brother, I'll always be nearby, okay? Sasuke nodded. Itachi would then take Sasuke up in his arms and hug him. It's almost time. Are you ready, Sasuke? Sasuke nodded. Itachi began to walk into the village with him. Konan waved at Sasuke as Itachi walked off. His feet strode forward, and with every step, he felt the gravity of what he was doing pulling back at him. Every step was a conscious decision not to be selfish, because if even for a moment he allowed himself to stop walking, he knew that he would keep his brother with him, and he couldn't do that. He broke into a run, his tears pushing across his temples with the wind's force. His feet hit the ground with all the force and determination of a brother willing to kill the world to protect the smile of his sibling, and he dared the world to try. As he ran, he made his way up to the Hokage's estate, up to the balcony. He sat Sasuke down in front of it. He knelt down beside the boy, Sasuke. Sasuke smiled at him despite his tears. I'll be strong for you. Itachi almost choked. Good, because I need it. As he said this, he couldn't hold back his own tears. He tapped his forehead. Sorry, Sasuke. It's goodbye for now, but I promise there will be a next time. He then stood, viciously beat on the door, and fled into the night. Not long after, Hiruzen opened the door. As soon as he did, he saw Sasuke, all strength to smile, having fled him along with Itachi. Hiruzen knelt down and hugged the boy, and let him cry on his shoulder. Welcome home, Sasuke. Itachi was quiet the whole way back to the base. Konan was as well, though that was nothing new. As they entered the base, Itachi made it to their bedroom and scrambled to get everything together that was his, burning the rest to leave no trace behind of his presence. He knew that the intelligence squad would attempt to interrogate Sasuke if Hiruzen allowed it, and if so, that meant it wouldn't be long before the Anbu arrived. So he got his stuff together, and as he did, he noticed on the bed a tiny stuffed toy. Barely held together by stitches, it was the same thing Hiruzen had given to Sasuke. It was the only anchor Sasuke had during this turbulent ride, and now it was the only anchor Itachi had to Sasuke. He picked it up and felt his strength leave him. Cradling it in his arms, he cried, Sasuke. 5 years later, the sun was shining high in the sky, the summer's warmth filling the village. Sasuke, bearing the proud crest of the Uchiha upon his back, wore the bandana with the crest of the hidden leaf marked through, Itachi's bandana, and though it was in bad taste, Sasuke didn't care. His love for his village and for his brother kept him proudly displaying everything that made him up. The whole time, he smiled defiantly toward the future. To his side was Sakura Haruno, swooning over him. But what else was new? She was cute, a little annoying, but her charm was undeniable. And beyond her sat Naruto Uzumaki, his all-time best friend. And I'm going to be the Hokage, Naruto declared. Kakashi, having listened to the most cliche of all introductions in the world, smiled awkwardly and looked to Sakura, whose introduction consisted of only her name and her desire to have Sasuke for a husband one day. This caused Sasuke to smirk at her, but when his time came around, he spoke honestly and from the heart. My name is Sasuke Uchiha. I'm the last of my clan in this village. Things I like are origami and onigiri. Things I dislike are those who take advantage of others for their own gain, but all the same, I hold to the duty of a shinobi to do for his village exactly that. Every person has their value, and their value is spent on the freedom they have and what they wish to do with that freedom. For me, I want to spend my value and my freedom on the safety and protection of others. And as for my dreams, I have two. I want to recreate my clan and ensure that they're the most loyal clan the village could ask for. And secondly, I wish to save my brother. And that's where I'm gonna call it. I think that actually wraps up the series. We got to see what happens when Sasuke leaves with Itachi to join the Akatsuki, and sadly, that led us to the decision that Sasuke would have been safer left behind in the village. But at the same time, this led to Sasuke's development becoming more positive as he searches for ways to save his brother instead of killing him. Now, this is obviously an open ending. If you really loved this series and this particular video, then please feel free to let us know in the comments and share this video series with the rest of your friends. If we get this video up to enough views, then maybe we'll continue the story. Like, what if Sasuke tried to save Itachi? Would you like that? Good. I'll consider a story for it, but you gotta follow through on your end of the bargain, and part of that is to like and subscribe. Make sure you click that bell icon too. It'll notify you when we drop other videos like this one. You'll want to know if a sequel series ever gets produced, right? Until next time, remember to be kind to others. That's the Amagi's Nindo, our ninja way. Peace.